I attached a zip file. I uploaded to this to Skype. So if you guys want to download it before we start the class, that would be good. Can anybody confirm that you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we will hear you.
Okay, thank you. So go ahead and download the files. We're in process. We're waiting for a few people. All right. I think we're getting about almost there. How's everybody? Start to my desktop. All right. So how's everybody weekend? You guys have enough time to regenerate, recharge, and everything?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So I know it's early morning and some people's late evening for you guys, so bear with me. We'll get through this together as your team. So just give me those 4 hours, and after that, you can do whatever you want to do. But this 4 hours, we're gonna learn a lot of stuff. We're gonna have a lot of fun, and of course, you're gonna have to listen to me. So, all right, I'll give you a couple of minutes for you guys to download that file, unzip it. This is going to be a 2-day session, right? We have today, and we're going to continue on Wednesday. So we'll finish what we can today. Depends on the lab, and then we'll finish the rest on, if we don't finish all the labs today, we'll finish some on Thursday. We got more to do on Thursday as well. But Thursday load's not as big, so. All right. So this is the same thing that you guys seen this before. We're just talking about what we do as Wintellect. We are a consulting company as well as we do training, as you know, and we do also have on-demand training. We had industry influences around a different technology. We had over 30 books that have been published by Wintellect consultants and trainers. And we are offering 10% discount to anybody who wants to attend any of the role-based certifications in Azure, which if anybody interested, we can talk about it more detail offline. If you are, let me know. I myself, I carry certification across, Microsoft, Oracle, IBM, CompTIA. I carry about 150 different certifications. So I can be a good resource for you if you're interested in that. I always tell people that, if you're going to have to learn something, might as well get the certification too, because you know how that is. In today's world, it's more important that, not that how much you know and all that. It's good that you have a formal education, having all the degree and stuff. I myself carry, multiple masters, but having certification tells you that you're current, which is a very good in the industry these days. So, all right. I hope everybody had a chance to download the files and unzip it and everything, right? So we are going to start with managing Azure Window VM. So we have a bunch of different topics that we're going to cover today. And we're going to do high availability, which is one of the key feature in Azure, as well as we're doing backup and restore, so all that good stuff. All right. So the first thing is we go to manage Azure Windows VM. Now we know it's a lot easier to create a VM in Azure Portal, but today we're also going to show you how to create it in PowerShell. So we're going to kind of do back and forth. We'll do some in the portal, and we'll do some in the PowerShell. So this. When we create a virtual machines, so virtual machine is just like you have a server on a remote site, right? So when we create a VM, virtual machine, you always have to connect to that VM. So there people say, well, I'm already in Azure, why do I have to connect to the VM? Because VM is a separate object, separate entity, so you still have to connect to the VM. and we have different images, and pretty much any images you can think of course, all the Microsoft images are in there, any versions of Windows, Windows 8, Windows 10, Windows Server 2012, 2016, all SQL Server, as well as we have IBM Ubuntu Server, we have Oracle Server, so we have a lot of VM images. Now, if you're are already built in Azure Portal, we also can use a specific VM sizes. We're going to talk about that. And you already deploy a VM. How do we resize the VM? And we're going to talk about different state in VM. So before we talk about, okay, creating a VM is pretty easy. A couple statements you're going to run, but what are things that we need to know? I always tell, before you go in and create anything, you want to make sure that you know all the properties and you know what the property is supposed to be set up before you go into that particular form. So we need to know the name of your application resources, and I said about it the other days also. When you create anything in Azure, from the very beginning, it is very good to have some type of business rules. So every time you create a VM or any object in Azure, that we're going to have the name with the department initial or the individual initial. Do we want to attach date? I mean, any kind of thing that you wanted to make sure that follow the business rules. The location where the resources are stored. So that's a very good thing. With the other day we were talking about it. So normally you want to pick the location the closest to you, because that would be for performance, right? The closer you are, the quicker you can connect. Because anything we're doing when we're connecting to the VM, we are connecting over the internet. So you wanted to make sure that it's close to you. However, sometimes the one close to you is a very popular one and is a key organization that are using that particular data center in that location. It might be cheaper to go somewhere a little bit further. So those are kind of things. So when you're doing that, there's also a pricing calculator that you can use in Azure to find out which site is the cheapest for you and what type of performance hit you're going to take if the further you go. So sometimes between the balance of performance and making sure that you still have the performance, but also you have a affordable price. So you might want to look at that to make sure, play with it to make sure which location. So it's not always the closest to your organization. The size of the VM is a big thing. That, of course, the larger size of the VM you want, the more it's going to cost you. So you also need to determine, do we need that size? What type of size of VM can I start with? Also remember, in VM, you can always upscale or downscale the VM, the size of the VM. So it's not important to make sure that the first time I have to have it right. It's not like that. If you don't think you're not using the usage of the size of the VM, you can scale it down at any time. And the maximum number of VMs that can be created. So there is a maximum number. It depends on the type of subscription you purchase that you can create it, but that's really up in like thousands of them. But you might want to make sure that you know what the maximum number of VMs that you can create it under each subscription, and the operating system that the VM runs. You need to also know what operating system we want to run. This is all the information you want to gather before you create your VM. The configuration of the VM after it starts. What do we need to configure? The related sources that the VM needs. What do we need to know before you can deploy that VM? So, but on top of it, you got to make sure that somebody has a permission. So within each subscription, not every user, you may not give them a create VM permission. They might have a view VM permission only. So of course, and most of all, permission-wise, you have to have the permission to create. So how can you create your first VM? There's many ways we can deploy it. We can deploy it from Azure Portal. We can use the resource management templates. We can use Azure PowerShell. You can also create it from a client SDK. We have REST APIs and Azure CLI. So we'll try to create it in Azure PowerShell in today's demos. So the first VM we're going to do is creating with PowerShell. So I also make sure that I also provide the statements for you so you guys don't have to type it in. So let's try to do the first one when we're still awake, alert, and enthusiastic. So let's try to log into the portal. some of the stuff that we do might require a specific type of permission. So I am logging into my own portal. So I'm giving you guys time to make sure that everybody have time to log in to the portal. I'm sorry, somebody had a question for me? Or I'm just hearing things? That's what happens when you get older. You start hearing things. All right. So I hope everybody's in. So if I'm going to open up the document also that we are going to look at. So before we go in and to start creating things, I want you guys to look at the screen for a second with me, please. So let's talk about some of the steps here that I want to make sure. So one thing that we are going to use the VM you create here. We're going to create multiple VM as well today in different labs. So make sure that you stay consistent within the same, for the same lab that you use the same resource group. We need to make sure you're using the same location. So if you start going across different locations, you're going to, now, even though we all have our own resource group, I think it would be good to make sure that when you name your resource groups and the VM that you put your initial at the end. So that way we can determine separate which one is yours. Okay? So the very first thing we're going to do is we are going to create the credential. So when we run we are setting a parameter for get credential. So when we type the get credential, now the username and password that you give there, you must make sure that you're familiar, you need to write that down, as well as you need to have a small letter, a small letter, as well as number and a special character. So it can be anything from 12 to 72 digit you need to have for the password. Make sure that don't make the password too complicated, because I don't want you guys to forget the password. Okay, make sure something you can type in easy. So once we have the credential, and we are set a variable the credential, we're going to create a VM that, so anytime you create a VM, the VM must have a credential assigned with it. That credential is the only one can get into the VM. So that's the owner of the VM. Now once we have the VM, we are going to go and connect to the VM. So that's what we can do. Like, so here we're doing get the public IP address of the VM, and I'm going to also show you the portal, how we can get that. Now, before we go to the next step is talking about going using the remote desktop. So before we do the lab, make sure that you have remote desktop enabled on your computer. And again, if you have, it depends on what browser you're using for the portal, make sure that you have pop-up enabled on your browsers. If you don't have pop-up enabled, when we go into the remote desktop, you will have an issue. So make sure that too, it's remote desktop enabled. And you have you also have pop-up enable on the browser. So this is how you can go in, or you know as well as I do, right? You can just type MSTSC, and when you type MSTSC, it will show up, and we just put the IP address. So there are a couple ways that you can connect to the portal, either way you wanted to try. So once we get into the portal, so this is the to get into the VM. So this is, once we see this screen, that means that you're able to connect to the VM that you created. We'll talk about different marketplace images also. Then once we have that, you also have to create an image, publish the image to your VM. So in this particular one, we are using Microsoft Windows Server. But here we're just trying to find what images they have, what images are available. You should see a lot more than that, but you'll see a bunch of different images. From that, we are going to use Microsoft Windows Server. So in order to use a particular image, you need to know the publisher. So in this particular demo, we're doing Microsoft, of course. However, you can do, if you're looking for IBM or Oracle, the publisher will be IBM or Oracle, and you will see a list of the VMs available to you. So this tells about all the different versions that we have. And then we are going to use Windows Server 2016 for that particular image to our VM. So when we add to our VM, we put what operating system we want on the VM. So when you get the VM initially, the VM does not have any operating system on it. So it's just like you just want to pass by and purchase a computer with no operating system. Then we need to put the operating system on it. So that's what we did. We put a operating system to that. And before we start creating the VM also, looking at the different sizes. So we have a general purpose size, compute optimized, memory optimized, storage optimized, GPU. So I do want you guys to look into those in detail before you create something. And high performance ones. High performance ones are more expensive because all the VM sizes comes with different capacity, and depends on what capacity you want. So especially if you're going to do anything like gaming servers and stuff, then you really need a high performance. So you wanted to look at each one, and the price goes with it. The higher performance you want, the more you're going to pay for that. But this particular one, we are just going to create, we're using standard D3 V2, and you can look at what those are in the portal. So we can look at it in two different ways when we're creating this. And here we're just talking how you can stop the VM, how you can start the VM, how we can update the VM, and different power state you see. So you normally power state, you can always run this command to see what the power state your particular VM is. Of course, most of us, you will have a monitoring tool, so you'll know that. But if you want to know in the command, this is how you can look at it. So I want to also show you before we start creating those. So that's what we're going to do, create it through the PowerShell. But if we wanted to create a VM in the portal, so just want to show you a couple of parameters. Here's a very easy one. So again, you need to tell what resource group you want, what the virtual machine name you want, what region you wanted to join. If you have availability group, which you don't have yet, later if you have availability group, you need to assign the availability option, which we don't have, but if you have availability set or availability zone, you can only assign that at the time you create the virtual machine. You cannot go back and confirm it. You cannot go back and update it. So it's very, very important to make sure before we create a virtual machine, is this a part of your availability zone or availability set? So that's the thing that you must know before you create a virtual machine. Okay, and in the sizes, of course, we're just using the standard, but if we do change sizes, you can see all the different sizes that you can have. Do we want small? Do we want generation 2? Do we want a general purpose? Do we want premium disk? So everything has costs associated with it. Because we create the VM through PowerShell, I don't want you to not know that these options are there. So in a real world, normally when people starting in creating or developing things in Azure, we want you guys to do it in PowerShell first. In the portal first. Once you're familiar with the portal, then you can do a PowerShell. Because PowerShell, you have to know your options, what choices you have, what image choices, what sizes you have, because it's not as not drag and drop like in the portal. So if you want to know all your options, it's very important to make sure you do that. Now, you can either create a SSH public key, but for the demo, most of the time, we will use a username and password. Now, those username and passwords cannot be recovered. You might have to change the password and stuff like that if you forget that. Now, So this is just talking the basic only. So notice that in the Create Virtual Machine, we have many options here. We have basic, we got disk, we have networking, we have management, we had advanced tags, and review and create. So between all of these different columns, we have about over 100 different fields so each of these I consider as a field. Each different field has their own property and their default value. So it'd be very important to make sure that you guys have the virtual machine user's guide or administrator's guide, because that will list every single field, what the value can be, what the values are, and what what type of properties set up for each field. So that'll be very interesting for you to know. So if we go to the disk here, also we have the options. We have the premium, we have a standard SSD, and HDD. HDD is the cheapest. So standard SSD is more expensive than the HDD, as well as premium, of course. Premium from HDD is about triple the cost-wise. Okay, so if I do standard, you'll see different listing, and if you have standard HDD or standard SSD, you will see different options here. Now we also have, if you want to create and attach a new disk, which we'll go to attach disk and stuff later, that we're going to set up the LUN, and that you will display here if your VM has any LUN. Now, once you go through that, the data disk, the next one is the networking. And I'm showing it for the portal because in the PowerShell you have to write statements to see this. So for the networking, so these are things that you need to know before you create your virtual machine, is what I'm trying to tell you. Now here also you're going to say what public IP address, what virtual machine name, virtual networking. Now if you're not a network person, some of you guys, maybe some of them you may not. If you're not a networking person, this is where you need to make sure you communicate with your network administrator to make sure that they tell you what type of, again, the name is not a problem, but when we go into the ports and stuff, it's important. Is it somebody talking to me or not? I think they were talking to each other. Okay. So virtual network is very important. Now the public IP address, you need to make sure that it's not, or you're going to assign an IP address to that virtual machine. Again, that information comes from the network administrator. Depends on what network administrator is doing with this. Okay. And public inbound port, so you have like anything, any operating system or any machines, you have an inbound port. All selected ports, allow selected ports or inbound port. If you selected port means that it's going to accept only specific port to connect to that VM. So if you're looking at the inbound ports, we have regular for HTTPS port 80, HTTPS. S means that it is secure. So for secure is 443, SSH, socket layer, it's a certification thing, and RDP is 3389. So if you want users to be able to get to your VM with particular port only, this is where you can decide. If you don't assign that, it means that it can connect with any of one of those. But that's the 4 that we'll use to connect to your VM. Now,
hey Martha, I have a question here.
You can have a question. Yeah, you have a question for me, or you have this is
May.
Yes,
no question. No, for you actually. Sorry, May. Sorry.
Sorry, no worry. Go ahead.
Okay, so the select inbound ports, whatever you listed, right? So it only says HTTP, HTTPS, and RDP. In case if my application is running on different port, how should I allow the inbound traffic?
Well, that is at the application level. That is at the VM level. To connect to the VM, you can only use these 4 ports. To connect to the VM itself, then you have an application layer on the VM. You're saying, right? So
yes.
Yeah, the application has their own port. They have their own link as well. So the question which she's asking is on a virtual machine you can have multiple applications, just like in your on-premises physical machine you can have 10 or 15 applications, right? Each application is going to be listening a particular port only. So that port is a different port. This is connecting port to the VM.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
And what about the okay, so yeah, I get it. What about the telnet?
VM and then connect to the application, or you connect straight to the application from any. I don't know that. Sorry, that was.
Okay, I have another question. If I need to open a telnet port, how that would work here?
Yeah, so the telnet port is going straight. You're going straight to. you can go, that's you're doing RDP into the machine, right? So you will have to set a custom, in that case, you have to create a custom connect string. By custom connect string,
Hey, May, we lost you.
I'm sorry.
I lost you for a few minutes, actually.
Yeah, so what happened is that, so if you're using any like telnet stuff, that's you're creating a custom port. But if the custom port, even though you have a custom port, whether telnet's 22 or 25, okay, I think 25, port 25, that's really a custom port, but we're going to have to couple with the HTTP. So you're going to have to still run on top of HTTP when we're doing the, so in that case, you are creating a custom virtual network. You're not using the standard virtual network in the VN. So it's more like if you do like VPNs or telnet, then you have to create another virtual network, which is a custom virtual network. This is a standard virtual network, comes out of the box. So before we even get here, so before we get to this place, in order to see all that, you're not going to create, you cannot create, when we create a virtual network here. So let's go into the virtual network. Yeah, go away. Just want to check, see if they'll let me do that. Well, I want to create, so you're going to have to create a virtual network. So we'll go into do that. But the key is that you're going to have to create a virtual network which has a custom virtual network which is going to allow you, let me see if I can go back there. So you're going to have to, so these are the virtual networks that the default created. So this is where you are going to create your own virtual network, and you're going to have to set up what type of address spaces you're going to allow, a specific address range that for your virtual network, and what resource group, what location you want, what the subnet is, all that good stuff. And you're also going to enable firewall, and you're going to allow what port to go in. But so that's more at the virtual network level, not at the VM level. VM, you can attach any virtual network, but you're going to attach a custom virtual network to get to the telnet. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am, yes.
So you have to, so in your case, if you want to do that, before you create the VM, you got to go create a virtual network first, and that virtual network has to allow port 25 to come in, or whatever telnet port is. I think it's 25, I may be wrong, but a telnet to, in a firewall, you got to make sure that is enabled and allow that particular port to come in. But by default, if these are the default VM virtual networks they created when I create the VM, the default will only allow that full port only.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
And yes. And another question what I have is, while creating the VM, you showed an option password and SSH public key, right? Mm-hmm. So the SSH public key is a key-based authentication?
Yeah, so SSH, yeah, so if we do SSH key, then you're using a third-party authentication. So you're doing either certificate authority or someone that have to give you the key. So you're going through a third-party organization to get the authentication for the SSH key. Have you used
No, I'm not getting that actually. So
okay.
We can create our own key, right? Public key.
When you're doing SSH, you can create, I started in creating SSH key, that's a good question. SSH key, I never created in my own. I normally use certificate authority to do the authentication. So if you're doing it, if you're creating on your own, how are you going to authenticate it with? Are you authenticating with Azure AD?
Talking about it's like a LDAP
or
some AD where we get, okay.
So yes, okay, but so if you're doing, okay, but in the LDAP and stuff, that is on premises, but are you carrying that LDAP also in your Azure Active Directory in your AD? So if you,
and there are a few, go ahead.
You have to have that if you're going to bring SSH key in. Let me look up, I'm going to look up documentation for SSH key using, you wanted to use that, you wanted to try it with LDAP, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I want to see how to use it SSH key based, login.
All right. I'll find a documentation for that. I normally do with, I normally use Certificate Authority. Certificate Authority is another organization, so they create the SSH key first. The key is not stored in our site at all, right? So they publish the SSH key to both the client requesting and the server. And that SSH key is not always the same, so it's going to change, so it's more secure that way. So every time you connect, they will produce another SSH key token for you. So that's how we use SSH key. But good question. I'll try to find something to test that if you wanted to use local.
Yeah, that would be great if we have any documentation on
Sure.
that. That would be really great. Because
Perfect.
for all our customers, we are recommending key-based authentication on the other cloud.
Are you doing multi-factor authentication or?
Yes, we do have MFA also. Yes.
And what your multi-factor? What are you using? Are you using a text messaging? I mean, what is your second?
Depends on the choice. I mean, either they can use a text or they have this Android or iPhone app, right?
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. I'll make sure that I'll look that for the SSH key. Good question. Any other questions? So that's why, so the VM is very important because creating VM is not hard, right? A couple click and stuff like that. But especially if so again, back to networking part is that these are the stuff, I don't know about you guys, but as a developer, I don't know what network address ranges are. I don't know what network subnets that they want us to use, right? So in a real world, this is where you need to communicate with your networking person and make sure, for today's demo, it's not a problem. We can create whatever we want because it's not in a real world. But when you go into your organization, you need to make sure that you have some type of set of rules creating the virtual network, because also you don't want to get each virtual network you get charged. So you don't want to have 10,000 virtual network if it's not needed. However, sometimes we will create multiple virtual network also because for a failover. So if one virtual network, something happened to goes down, we can go tap into the second or third virtual network, that type of thing, as well as for load balancing and stuff. So my point all here is that I don't know any of you guys are networking people, but any of you are networking, you need to make sure that you also stay in that range that your organization purchased, because we all know that, right? The IP addresses are purchased by, we had to purchase from ISA, which is International Standard Institution, that when you purchase IP addresses, they tell you your IP address ranges from what to what. So you have to make sure that you stay in that IP address range that your organization purchased. So unless you're not a person, you might not know that. Again, also when we go into subnetting, you need to know that are we subnetting 16 or 24, so there are different subnetting you have. Also in IP addresses, there are IPv4 and we have IPv6. So there's two different type of IP addresses. Most IP addresses we have here, if we're seeing like 10.1.0.0, that is a IPv4 address. If you start seeing like F and O's and stuff, that is IPv6 addressing. So originally, a little bit about IP address. IP addresses came out in early 1970s, and because IPv4 addresses, as like I said, there is an address range, and every organization has to purchase that IP address range that they can use within their organization. So the organization is concerned that they're running out of IPv4 addresses, so they came up with IPv6 addresses to extend, to be able to get more IP addresses out, because you cannot have the same IP address, exact same IP address on the network. You have to have a different IP address. So IP address is like identity for the PCs, just like nobody can have the same home addresses. No one has the same address as me unless you stay in my house. You're not going to have the same home address. The same thing with IP addresses. So those are reasons. So anyway, long story short on that, so make sure that you communicate. My whole point is make sure you communicate with your networking organization, networking administrators, to make sure that you're using the right address rates and all that. Last year, Microsoft had audited, and more than 30% of the company were using the IP addresses that they didn't purchase. So they got audited. So that's why I want to make sure that you guys look at the IP addresses and make sure you're using the right IP addresses that your organization purchased. All right? So that's what we were talking about in the IP addresses. Go back to the virtual machine. So I was trying to answer some of the questions. I won't change that. Again, back to the VM, because we're going to create a VM as a very basic VM. I want you to know that there are different, also important stuff that you have. We can also create the SSH key, all that we can do. Also, we have a accelerated networking. In order to do accelerated networking means that they have higher priority when you go out to the network, go out to the internet. But to have the accelerated networking, you have to use different type of sizes that when we are creating in the disk. So the higher sizes and stuff. So normally, again, like gaming machines and stuff, you can have accelerated networking and load balancing. If we have to turn it on and off. So before we create the VM, we need to know the VM is a part of high availability group or a load balancing. And we'll talk more about what high availability load balancing is. But you need to make sure you're aware of that. Once you create the VM, you cannot go back and change it. Say, hey, now this VM is a part of the high availability or stuff. That's very hard to do. So make sure that you're aware of that situation. Management. So management, of course.
One more question, May. Sorry to interrupt.
Wait.
I have
no,
another
please.
question.
No.
Okay, after we create the VM, right, is there an option I can attach a VM to multiple, after creating a VM, I just want to update the port number, it has to go to a different port or something at the VM level.
Yeah.
So can I attach that after creating the VM?
You can create you can change sizes. You can do you cannot change operating system on a VM by updating. You can change it to a same version for like 2012 to 2016, but you can't go from Microsoft to IBM. You can't do that. But you can change, you cannot change that two things. You cannot change if your VM is going to be a part of the availability group or load balancing. Other than that, you can update. You can update your VM.
So you're saying that I can update the virtual network with different port configuration, whatever, I want to do. I can attach multiple virtual network, you're saying, to a VM?
Well, you want to set up multiple virtual network. However, multiple virtual networks. So let's talk a little bit back up here. The multiple virtual network is only we're setting up multiple virtual network doesn't mean all of the virtual network are going to be on simultaneously. We only set it up as a failover for availability group. So if one virtual network goes down, we have the second virtual network kicks in. If second goes down, third can kick in. Okay, you can have up to 9 separate virtual network attached to a VM. So that at the VM level. However, on the application level, you can have different virtual network assigned to each application on top of your VM. So there's 2 things that we have to look at: connecting to the VM, connecting to the VM, and then connecting to the application. So always think of it that that's a 2 separate layer. So we want to connect to the VM or connect to the application. So I would not suggest having multiple VM networking for each application. I do not suggest that because virtual networks are expensive. However, I do suggest to have at least a failover for the VM. So we want to make sure the VM doesn't go down, because if you set up a failover on the application, but if the VM goes down, your application is going to go down. You with me on that? So you want to make sure that you protect the VM first. And if you have budget-wise, then you can have virtual network, but you can have as many. You can have 8 virtual network assigned to any object, either a VM or an application or a storage device or anything. But you can set up to 9 virtual network.
Okay, but I cannot use the same IP range for 2 networks, right? Because
no,
in that
well,
case,
that's the whole reason you have a separate virtual network. Yeah. But you might be able to use the subnet. You might subnet it. You have to subnet it.
Okay. Maybe I need to play around with that more. Maybe I'll get a better idea.
IP. No worry. When we have it, so the reason that subnetting comes in, just so you guys know, in general networking is that, okay, so we purchased 20 IP address from this organization, right? But you can, when you go out to the internet, you have to have that 20 IP address. You can only use that. But within my organization, I can create subnetting, and I can have 100 IP address. PCs. So I have 100 PCs in my client, but I don't need to buy 100 IP address because I'm allowing only 20 IP to go out to the internet at any given time. But within my organization, it doesn't matter. As long as you don't go out to the internet, you can assign any IP address to those machines. We only need to make sure that when you're going out to the internet, that you only using the IP addresses are assigned to your organization, the IP addresses that you purchase. Does that make sense? That's where subnetting comes in.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah, all right. Okay.
Thank you.
So, all right, and so here's back to the virtual machine, because we only do a 4 or 5 click and you're going to get a virtual machine. So I don't want you to think that that's all it is. It's not that. There's a lot more detailed configuration that can goes in. So again, back to, to make it all organized for your organization, from the very beginning, you guys need to have a set of rules that, okay, these are the IP addresses that you can only use for a virtual network. These are the type of subnetting that you're going to do. You need to have those business rules before you start creating any virtual machine within your organization. And also, you need to also look at your subscription to see, do you have any limitation? Unless you buy an enterprise version of Azure subscription, you have a limitation of how many virtual machines you can build. So you need to make sure that also, because I had a customer about 6 weeks ago, they called me and said, oh, we can't create any virtual machine anymore. So what happens is they hit the match. So you need to make sure that you want to be aware how many virtual machines that you can create as well. That depends on your subscription. So that's something you might want to look into it to make sure you know how much you have. It's always good to know what you have, right? So that's my rule of thumb here. At a monitoring, do we want to monitor at a boot level for your, which is startup in your Azure level in your VM, boot diagnostics, it's on or off. If you have it on, that means that it is creating logs. So sometimes you might not want to keep it on all the time. You might want to only turn it on as needed because you don't want to create a big log file, which is eating up your hard drive space as well. Operating system guest diagnostics, do you want to allow other third-party application to diagnose your VM as well? That's what operating system guest is. And if the diagnose, all this information, the logs, do we want to put it in a different storage account? So normally the logs, we store it in a different storage account because in the entire Microsoft Azure, storage is the cheapest thing. So you can get a 100 terabyte storage account for pretty cheap. VM is expensive, so you want to make your VM as small as possible. Anything that you can push out to the storage, you're going to push out to the storage. The storage is a lot cheaper. So that's the reason that we're saying, hey, when you set it, if you have this on and you have those logs coming in, you want those logs to be stored in a storage account, not on the VM, you can do that. All right? And do we want to do system assign managed identity? We're not doing that. That's when you're doing DHCP and all that. Do we want to have auto shutdown on or off? So auto shutdown, we normally keep it off. We don't want it to auto shutdown unless you have a reason you want to do that. Do we want to have enable backup? So if you want to back up that VM, your backup must be enabled at this point. So see, these are the things that you need to know ahead before you create your VM. Now, can you go back and do stuff? Yes, you can, but it's always better that you create it at the time you create the virtual machine, that you have all the necessary information. So my whole point is gather everything that you need to know before you create a virtual machine, okay? Now, the event step. This is if you have an extension that you want to install to your VM. So there's a lot of extension comes with it, right? So PowerShell is another extension. If you want to install PowerShell on your VM, so you can install, you can select the particular extension you want to install at here. You can also install when you're already in the VM as well. But if you know ahead, it is good to install it from here. And do you want to do a cloud initialization? That is if you wanted to customize a Linux VM. So that's something you wanted to know more. So if you want to learn more, you can go into that. And the tag. So tag is also from a very, very beginning. You guys need to make the decision that what type of topic. So tag is more for organizing things, as well as to find out which particular VM is causing you more money. So normally you can tag the VM, you can tag the resource group. So when we go in to look at the cost analysis, like I showed I think last week, if you're looking at that, you can break it down by tag. So examples are, well, this resource group, let's say resource group 123 is costing us $10,000. Within that 10,000 costs within that resource group, what VMs, how many VMs are in that, in each VM, what are they costing, all that stuff, you can group it by tag. So tag is how, it's a breakdown for the cost. And it's sort of, we use it for some organizations that, each department has their own budget. So we want to make sure that we can bill each department correctly. So we tag it based on the department. So, okay, so that department, okay, your cost for the, Azure this month is, 200 or whatever that is. So in order to be able to tell that, we have to tag it. So you can create a name, what the value is, and you can select what resources that you wanted to tag. Okay, so those are all the things that we need to know. So we're going to go ahead and create, and notice that the Cloud Shell is, if you don't use it, it kind of go up. It's always say, do we want to quit or do you want to reconnect? They do that for security purpose, but sometimes that can be, annoying, because if it goes down, any variable that you created, the variable that you created are per session. So in that session goes down, all the variable that you created is go with it, because the variables are only a temporary, it's only stay in the clipboard, right? So so make sure that keep your keep the Cloud Shell alive. So keep your PowerShell alive. All right. So any more questions or concerns or burning desires? Everybody good? Let's go ahead and do the lab. So let's go in and open the document. You want to open the document as well as the statement, because the statement will help you. You don't have to type in. Okay, that's a disk now. I don't want that. Manage VM statement. Manage Windows VM. I think that's the one. Okay, I think that's this. All right, so make sure everybody back in the portal where I am. And so the very first thing here, you can copy from the original, the step-by-steps here, the Word document as well. But sometimes when you copy and paste from that, things kind of go haywire. So I also give you guys a notepad so it's easier to cut and paste. So first thing we're going to create is a resource group. So for this particular, even though you already have a resource group, for this particular lab, I would prefer you guys create a new resource group and make sure that you know your resource group name. You don't have to create a resource group, again, like I was saying earlier. Make sure that also the resource groups that you had it before you want to delete it, you can. Make sure that you put your initial to your resource group name so we know that is yours. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to create a resource group, and that's, you can go copy and paste a statement for the resource group. Somebody say something to me? Okay, why? Okay, why? Okay, what is my? Okay. Huh. Okay, I'm getting. I guess I must have copied it twice. It's still building it. That's why. Not done yet. I'm just going to put a new one. Okay, and when we're going into it, make sure that you are in PowerShell and not in Bash Shell, guys, okay? So the first thing we are doing is we are going to create a resource group. And like I say earlier before, I am going to just to make it. even you copy that, will we still have to go and fix some of the stuff though? When you cut and paste, it's always that's a problem. But at least it'll be, you don't have to type in everything. So I'm just gonna put initial and all that, so I know that's when I'm doing it today. And we'll try to use the same resource group throughout all the labs today. Okay, but.
That looks like a new Azure VM command there, May. We were copying the resource group from the Word document. That's a different command.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I give you guys the. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, maybe I don't have the but let me make sure that I have the right document here. Let me go back to the document here. Okay. Create a resource group, create a VM. Yeah, okay, so I was doing a create a VM statement here. But you guys have the notepad too, right? I mean, you have the statement files as well. Okay. All right,
yes.
So.
Hey, May, actually, by default, my terminal is going to Cloud Shell. How should I switch back to PowerShell?
Okay, on the top, if you look at the left corner, let me go back in here.
Oh, there is a drop-down box. Yeah, I see
Drop down box, so you got to switch it back into PowerShell.
Yes.
Yeah, by default, yeah, they always go to, okay, back to what I was talking here. Back to, do I have two session open? No, okay. All right, so document, let me go back to the document. Why is that? Okay, so, okay, first create a resource group first, then we create the VM. Okay, yep, I'm doing it different in this one, don't I? Okay. All right. I have to go back and create that. All right, so let's just do the one in the documents not to confuse us. I thought I kind of pasted the right stuff. I guess not. All right. And if you think that you're going to have a permission issue later, guys, go ahead and create it. I don't know, I did send you guys email to everybody to be able to create it in your, to be able to have a Azure portal, your own Azure portal. So if you have your own Azure portal created, I would prefer you guys do the labs today in your own Azure portal and not at your organization Azure portal. Again, that's it. Let's do the from the document instead of my. Okay, no, I think I know what it is. I don't have the right statement in there. Backup for recovery, management this. Okay. I have a different file, so I have to. Okay. All right. So first thing, we created the resource group. Sorry, give me a second to catch up. Because I want you to have my initial. So, of course, like I say, we create multiple resource groups the other day. So our guys are already good at creating resource group. I don't know about you guys, but I can hear people talking. Can you guys hear that too? Just so anybody, whoever has your phone, the audio on, we can hear you talking, just so you guys know. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we have a resource group. We're going to get a credential. So we are going to set up a credential, that username and password. Again, remember that username and password because I'm not going to know that username and password, okay? So asking for a username, make sure whatever username you use, that you are going to remember that username. And when you get old like me, you're going to write that down. Even though I know password, you're not supposed to write it down.
So this username password is for the Windows machine login, right?
It's not, it's to the VM. It's just a VM.
Yeah, to the VM.
Yeah, to the VM.
To the VM.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And so whatever you type in, you're on your own then, and you must remember. Okay, password one. All right, so we have create a credential. We have create a resource group. Now we are going to go in. The next thing is we're going to create the new VM. Okay, so you can fix it in here if you want by VM name. Make sure that you're creating your new VM in that resource group we just created. Okay. We need to make sure it's in the same resource group that we created. Okay, virtual network. Also, we have it's a virtual network. I'm just going to put initial on all of them so I know that's the one I created today. So
we need to create our own virtual network, right, before even running this command?
Well, here it's going to create a default virtual network. So we only create a virtual network. In the real world, you want to create a virtual network because you need to make sure that you are in the right address range and all that. But for the demo, we don't have to do it. But when you do it at your organization, I highly recommend you create the virtual network first. Okay? But
Okay,
here
okay.
they will
now,
create
because I see you typing a name, myvnet.
Yeah, that's just a name because that's
the name
just,
you're giving. It's not the existing one. Okay.
Not the existing one. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, because for this particular app, I want to make sure we keep it all clean as much as possible. Because I know when I teach 2 or 4 classes a day, for me, I get confused on which one I'm in because I have too many of them. So, but in a real world, I want you to create your virtual network first because then you give all the parameters and stuff correctly. Here, they're just going to use the default because this is my demo. It's not a production machine. So, but if it's a production machine, you definitely need to make sure.
Yeah, got that.
Mm-hmm. Why? Okay, for some reason it's not liking that. What is that with that statement? Okay, what are we? Okay. Sometimes I hate to do it that way. All right, use EVM bash resource.
May I think you are missing a double quote in front of the my public address.
Okay, yeah, that's why I went back and look at it this way because I'll see it. Okay, yep,
My
you
public
got,
address.
yep, you got it. But I'm missing something because it's still expecting something to bring it to me. So everybody notice that on the my public address, right, where you guys will have the same thing if you copy and paste. But I copied already and have a statement. I don't know what happened to my file. I have to go back and look. But notice that the public IP address name is my public IP address. Before that, my public IP address, we are missing a double quote. See, very good. I know you guys will find that. Yeah, making sure that you guys are awake. That's what instructor do a mistake. That's what we tell people. Okay, now it's going. Now this takes a while, guys. So when that is going, you'll notice that it is creating your operation, not operating system. It is creating your all virtual machines. So they're going to, you know, they're reformatting the disk, all that. So this is where you notice that 15, 16%. And so it'll take a couple of minutes. I am going to go fill my coffee. So I'll be right back. If you got 2 or 3 minutes, if you want to, fill your coffee, water, check your email or anything you want to do, you got 2, 3 minutes here, guys. Okay? I'll be right back. Mine is 62% or 63%. So it's still a couple more minutes, then we'll continue.
Hey, May.
Yes.
Meanwhile, a quick question, can we image the properties from an existing server? Just set up a blank VM and just image all the properties.
Yeah, you could clone it. That's what you can clone the VM. Yeah, so
Okay.
normally you'll set up one VM in one region, and let's say, we just did for a H&R Block, so they have so many locations, so you just create one VM, and then we just push it out to all the different regions. Yeah, so we can clone them.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, if we had to do every single one, I wouldn't mind doing every single one. I'd get paid for each one as a consultant, but I don't think customers don't want to pay for each single one, right? And
Yeah.
also for consistency, you want to make sure that way you have consistent throughout. So normally, if you create a VM with, if you have third-party applications, everything, your operations have you install the whole thing and you clone it to other side.
Yeah, May, can we clone from on-prem VM to cloud?
Yes, you can.
On-prem VM to cloud. Okay.
Yeah. For vice versa, you can do that too. I'll create something on the VM on cloud, and I'll give it to the customers, and we can push it out to on-prem for them as well.
So for cloning that, we need to first create the virtual network, and then we need to clone the on-prem VM to cloud, correct?
Yeah, yes, and so there are a couple ways you can do it as well. So what normally I would recommend in that case is creating an image. So once we have the virtual machine with everything you got on, just like on prem machines, I'm sure you guys done it many times, we create an image and just push out the image. Yep, we can do it either way.
It will be having the same the specs like the hardware settings.
Yes. So what happens is that the only thing we have to do is that if you're going to move the virtual machine, if you're going from on-prem to virtual machine, so if we create this image, whatever, let's say we're going from on-prem to the virtual machine. So once you have all of them set up and you're working on your on-prem and we clone it, but when we get to the virtual machine side, to the cloud, there might be a couple of parameters you might have to change because you might not be using the same virtual network. You might not be using the same network and stuff. So you might have to go in and change that. You know what I'm saying? Unless you want to set up a virtual network gateway to make sure that you don't have to change either that setup is on either side. But then that is an additional step that you have to install. You have to configure a virtual network gateway, because that way they know any virtual network, so they know it's time for on-prem to that. Because you may not be on this, you definitely will not be on the same network if you're doing from on-prem to cloud. You with me on that, right?
Yeah.
That's the only thing you'll have to change.
Yeah. But what about the storage and all? Like you say, for example, in my on-prem, this one I have some 250 gigabyte storage. But when I image that, it would be having the same storage?
Same storage. However, now if the storage is that, okay, so let me back up on that. If the storage is that a attached disk or it's a detached disk? If it's a detached disk, it will not go to a virtual machine. It will not go to cloud. You know that, right? Only attached storage disk will go. If it's detached disk, makes an external disk, like if you hook up to a RAID array or something, and then you will have to point on the virtual machine. When you get the virtual machine, we got to point it to that storage, which is easy. You just attach that storage, that external storage. If you have external storage on premises, on-prem, you can attach to any virtual machine. So you will have to reattach it. That would not go with it. When you create the image, it will not go the external storage.
Okay.
If it's attached storage, it will go with it. You know what I'm saying? But if it's not attached storage, it will not go.
Okay. And the number of cores and everything will be same, right?
Yes,
Whatever
that will be the same. Yes.
On-prem. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Oh, you're welcome. That's what I'm here for. Okay, guys, your machine's back. Mine came back. So we are ready to move to the next step. So, all right, so the connecting to the VM. So before we can connect to the VM, so now what we did, we created a resource group and we created a VM. So because we said we created it, of course, I don't trust the machine. I am going to go look at myself, right? So as a good technical people, we are going to go look at that. So I'll go back to my, first of all, go back and find your resource group. And I find my VM already here. I can just go to the virtual machine. So make sure that you create the VM and make sure your VM is there on the portal. So you can go into your resource group. For resource group, you can open up the VM, or if you're like me, you can just go into the virtual machines from the menu and go into your VM. So if you go into the VM, you should see the public IP address is there already. However, because we are doing in PowerShell, we're also going to tell you how to go get the IP address. So that's what we're doing in the next step. But everybody able to locate your IP address there, right? You guys can see your IP address in your virtual machine in the overview blade, right? Anybody?
Yes, May, yes.
Perfect. Okay. But also, if you don't want to do that, you can also type that next command, that get AUC public IP address, resource group name, my resource group. Make sure you put the right resource group, and then now we have a IP address, and that IP address is the same. So we need to make sure we have an IP address in order to connect to that VM. So we're going to connect with a IP address. So you can either run that command in the step 5, or I normally do this just to make sure. But this is where if you don't have remote desktop connection enabled, you will not be able to, this window will not come up. So if that window come up, we can just type in the IP address. So there's 2 ways to get the IP address. I want to show you both of them. And then I had somebody tell me the other day that we don't have the same. It better be the same. We are connecting to the same machine. So IP address better be the same. Okay, so make sure you got your IP address. Mine is 40.84.131.142. And please do not type in my IP address. Please type in the public IP address on your machine. And click connect. And it asks for the username and password. Remember that username and password you put in earlier? I told you to make sure you remember. And it says second remote desktop connection window. We're going to say yes. All right. If you like me, you can see your desktop.
Yes, May.
All right. So everybody successful in connecting to your VM? Are we all happy? Are we happy? Trust me, you don't want me to sing. I'm a horrible singer, so. If you don't talk, I'm going to start singing. That's my threat to my kids, so they'll start talking right away. All right, so what we have now is we have a machine, but we got nothing on that machine, right? We just have a machine. We have our VM, so we can go ahead and close down the connection if you want. So that because it's taking a lot of disk space to them. Okay, so we could disconnect the remote access there. We are going to go in, and we wanted to put an image, but we want to see what image are available, because depends on some site. Like I said, when we talk about site, we're talking about the locations, which is the data center. So each data center might have a different offer for them. And this offer, like Windows, I'm normal offer everything, but if there's a latest operating system come out, it might not be offered in every location. That's why we want to make sure that you choose what location and see what available in that location. Now, even though in step 6, I know I put like East US, but if you create the VM and the resource group and whatever that you created, that's what you want to stay in. So if we created South Central US, you want to stay in South Central US, okay? So this is just going to find a list of image publishers. Who are the publishers? What our choices are? What options do we have? So when you look at that, we got a bunch of different images. As you can see, a huge list, okay? Huge list of publishers that you can choose from. So those are any publisher you can choose. But so once we find out the publishers, you choose a publisher that you want and see which that publisher is offering, what operating system they're offering. So that's what we're looking for. So the next step is now for particular, we are going to publisher name. We're going into Microsoft Windows Server, and we want to see what they are offering. So this is just a, notice that in here we have to do several steps. This is a part of the just drop down when we create the VM in Azure portal, okay? So it tells you all the different versions of Windows Server that you have. So that's all. It just, so these are just to showing you all the different operations we have. Now, in this particular thing that we're going to go find, meant to filter the publisher and offer name to return a list of image name. So you can see we've got to do 4 or 5 steps just to get there, which something that you can do easily in a drop down in the portal. But some of, I don't know about you guys, but some of the developers does like the, they like using the PowerShell better than portal. Everything you do in PowerShell here, you can do it in the portal. But everything you do, everything you do in the portal, you can do it in the PowerShell. But some of the stuff that you do in the PowerShell, you cannot do it in the portal. That's why we want you to learn PowerShell. Are you guys, and I'm sure you guys are pro with PowerShell, right? Are you guys familiar with anybody not pro with PowerShell? Are you guys pro with PowerShell or anybody? I do have a very good book in PowerShell that I can share with you guys. If anybody interested, let me know. But
I'm interested, if you can share, that will be great, the book.
Okay, great. All right. Send me an email because the file is big. I will have to share my Dropbox to you, okay?
And also, can you let us know like which one we can execute? I mean, I know you mentioned there are some commands that can be done through PowerShell, but not through the
so
the UI. That you can give an example.
Okay, yeah. So when we go into like load balancing and stuff, I will provide things that we're doing today. So far you can do it in the portal as well, right? That's why I show you the portal first. But anytime that when you're doing like availability sets and load balancing and stuff, you can do it only in the PowerShell. So think of it as that any administrative type of command, or especially AD also, Azure Active Directory, you can. There's some of most of the commands you can only do it in PowerShell. You cannot do it in the portal. And they do it for a reason, because we don't want people to accidentally click things. You know what I mean? For a security reason, they want you to do it in PowerShell to make sure that people has to know their command and people has to know how to do it. So if they're not proficient with PowerShell, they cannot change things in AD. You cannot change things in load balancing and stuff. So as we go through, I will mention it as well. All right. All right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Asking for password again. And it must be the weekend. You guys are more talkative today. I guess you guys get recharged for the weekend. So as you can see, it's not complicated stuff here, what we're doing. But again, my main concern also is that after everybody be able to run it, it's going to take a couple of minutes, because it is creating the operating system, in your virtual machine. So when that is doing, I didn't want to do that. So let's look at, I'm going to look at some of these. I need to rerun this statement anyway, so it's not really. Okay, so let's create a new one. So let's, can you guys look at my screen for a second? Let's go through when that's still running. Let's understand the different VM sizes. So here we have common size, we have DV3, so CPU to memory. So before, when you're looking at these VM size is very, very important because everything is cost associated with it. So unless you really need a high CPU, so when we're talking about high CPUs, that we're talking compute optimized. So if you're going to do a lot of computation, a lot of calculation, then in that your application needs that, so you got to make sure that your VM has it. Then you need to use a high CPU to memory, but balanced CPU to memory to high CPU to memory is a big difference. Anything from balanced CPU can cost you like $23 a month to $5,000 a month on high CPU. So you have to really look at that to make sure that which one is useful for you. So on the different sizes. Now storage optimized. So we have different type also, that if you're using that VM, example, if that VM you're going to use to store data warehouse, which is more a storage type of data. There's not a lot of transaction is going to the data warehouse. Data warehouse, we use it more for like a reporting stuff. And that type of thing, and there's not transaction going in every second, that type of thing, then you want to use a storage optimize. Okay, for the VM side. For GPU, we also go into heavy graphic rendering. If you're going to use that VM to put all your videos, and let's say your organization have a lot of product and the product has videos in it, you wanted to use that, then you wanted to make sure that you select GPU. Now, also you can have a high performance. So normally you wanted to look at what application you're going to put on that VM, how many traffic's going to go to that VM. If there's, let's say your whole entire organization, there's a particular application that the whole organization uses and is a very heavily used, then you wanted to put it in the high performance VM. So you can also find what are the available VM sizes for the particular location. Again, each location, think of it as each location is different data center, and a different data center, especially for like graphic stuff, not every data center may not have that. So you got to look at what VM sizes are available for each for your location that you're thinking. So these are things that you wanted to look at it before you create your VM. Then the next command we're just showing you also here is that how you can resize your VM. So if you decided that, okay, I need to resize my VM, of course you can resize a VM very easily in doing it in the portal. But if you wanted to resize your VM here, so you have to decide which resource group you wanted to resize. Make sure you have the right resource group, the right VM. And this is, so we are changing the resource group additional from standard, and we're going to update that resource group. So you can update the resource group. You can, as a sign, set a different value for your resource group. After you create the resource group and you say, oh, that I need a different for my VM. You can change a hardware profile VM size. So that's how we can run that command. That you can see the other commands in there. And so step 14, I would recommend you to do that. But this is how, don't run that today. But the 14 is saying you can deallocate a VM, will remove any data on the temporary disk, and public IP address will change unless static IP address is being used. So normally it would change if you're using a DHCP, which is DHCP will release that IP address back. So you don't need to stop the VM. You can leave it running if you like. The last command that we want you to run also is the VM state. So VM state, we want to see what state is this, but let's say power state is running. But if you look at your VM also, it will tell the status is running. Okay, I know I didn't use my because I had a different IP address, public IP addresses. So anyway, so you guys should be able to run all of that. Mine running into something, but which is normal. that I have other things running that I gotta go back and check. So what we did, so this is just creating a VM to make sure that you have, and we can go back and look at virtual machines, see how many virtual machines you have. So we're going to stick with the same VM you have. So let me know if you have any problem running other statements. So we had created a VM before. Today we're just showing you how to create a VM using a PowerShell command. We're trying to show you what the PowerShell command, how to go find what image are available for you, what operating systems are available for you per publisher. Depends on you wanted to install Microsoft or you want to install Oracle or any other publisher, and we're showing you how to connect to the VM by using the remote desktop using the public IP address, and we went into creating the VM, all the prerequisites that you need to know before you start creating the VM. So creating the VM is a couple of statements you're running in the portal. You just a couple click, but there's a lot of information that you need to be aware of before you go in and create the VM. So that's our first virtual machine we created. Everybody able to get all the virtual machine working?
Yes, the first virtual machine is working.
Okay, perfect. So the other one's still running, right? So it's a pretty straightforward, right? It's not complicated, but it just has but I just want you guys to think about it because it's a lot of properties that just creating a state, VM is, as you can see, that's running the statement or a couple click on the portal. However, there's a lot of things that you need to think before you go in and create a VM, especially virtual network. So here we don't really care the virtual network because we don't have a lot of virtual networks running. But if you start creating a lot of the VM, you got to also remember each virtual network has their own assigned, what the space and what speed and all that. So you don't want to have so many applications running on the same virtual network. However, you also want to make sure you don't have, it's not a one-to-one relationship. Not each application doesn't have to have their own virtual network because virtual network is also cost. There's a lot of cost associated with a virtual network. So there is a fine line there that you need to decide how busy is that particular application, how many application I can put on one virtual network, what are the IP address range that we have, what type of subnet we have, all that good stuff. So, all right, guys, does that make sense? Is your second VM came back yet? I am going to go open the second one here. Anybody got the disk? The VM came back yet?
Not yet, May.
Oh wow, that take a lot longer. Okay, and we got a couple after that. With a couple statements you can run too. Okay, any questions? I know you were trying to say something. I'm sorry. I need to make sure.
The second one, we ran that command. It says some unauthorized. The VM got created though, the second one, but it says unauthorized and.
Oh, that okay. Yeah, that's what that's what I was concerned about it. That's why I was telling that to run it in your own environment if you can. You might not have permission to. You don't have permission to install operating system. That doesn't make sense though. Do you know you have permission to install operating system? Do you know?
Not really. I think we have a generic subscription, but probably we'll see if anyone else can do it.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I can't create it in Wintellect either. That's why I use my own environment. Yesterday I wasn't able to create it, but I'm a guest user, so maybe I'm thinking because I'm a guest user I couldn't do it. But yeah, but you're right. We'll see if other people, anybody able to do that. I'll go back to look at the statement. I just want to make sure the statement is right. Statement. Okay. Any of you guys able to create the second VM? Did anybody had you had okay? You were able to create the VM, but you weren't able to update it. Is that what you were saying? When you get that you can't update. Okay. Anybody had that problem, or anybody able to update? We're not hearing for anybody means that they're not there yet, or the yes or no, or what's going on.
I was able to create the second one, but
yeah, they were able to create the second one, but you can't update it. Is that the problem?
yeah.
Okay, so you can't update it. Anybody else? Is that two people cannot update it? Is that what so far? Brandy, were you able to update it? Paul, you here? Anybody? Everybody? Anybody that far yet or no? Yeah. Well, also, each of you guys might have a different permission on a different, I know you guys have a different subscription also. Some of you guys may not be able to update it. But if you can update it, that's okay. But you know that this is the commands that you could use to update, all right? If you cannot update it. I don't remember this case. Anybody able to successfully do it or not? I mean, if you don't have permission, that's nothing I can help there, but hopefully somebody has permission to be able to do that.
I had a problem in copying the command because I copied directly from the Word, the MS Word. So Is there any way it just created the VM? I don't think it used the second line and all, the virtual network name and
Yeah,
the
so
image name and
you
all.
can you can just update what you already have if you want to just update the one you already have.
So
Just make sure change it accordingly to the statement, right? Is that what you're saying?
no, can we update it? How can we update it? Like
Yeah, so the update, yeah, so this, if you look at you wanted to resize the VM, so first get the VM size first. That's step 12. So if you run that, step 12,
okay.
and the 13 is that, so after the end of the 13, you should see the statement. So normally, if it's in Word file, that's why what I would recommend is copy it to a notepad and then fix it in the notepad. So in there, make sure that you have the right resource group name and the right VM name in there. But you have in the portal, so in the portal, look up your VM to know what the VM size and stuff are. So what VM that did you create it?
Okay.
It's okay. So make sure that we have. So if I go to, just change that. You don't even have to run the second one, and that just they put it in the lab, but we shouldn't have to waste our time doing that. There's an agent public IP running, but it doesn't give me the size. Oh my God. So if you're in the My VM, on the portal, you can go into the size and it will tell you. You can also, another thing we can do, you can just resize it. There's a resize button there. You can resize it there as well. That's the way to do it in the portal. The other one is do it in the, we're just showing you how you do it in the, you're doing by PowerShell, but you can resize it from there as well. So I just click the resize it. It will resize it to a standard. It will resize whatever you highlight. It will resize it to that. So you can do that with that as well in the portal. Everybody got that? What I say about that, right? Open your VM in the portal, and in the configuration section, in the middle section, you can, under the settings, you can go click size. That will, in the size, it will tell you what size you're in, and you can resize it. So that's a way to resize it in the portal. The other way is to resize it in the PowerShell. And any of you guys, like I was telling earlier, if you didn't hear me earlier, if I have a PowerShell book, if you if you're interested, make sure you send me an email. I'll be glad to send it to you. I cannot upload it because the file is too big, but I'll give you my Dropbox. I'll share my Dropbox if anybody's interested. That's the first PowerShell book that I ever had, and it has all the best commands in there. If you know every PowerShell command in that book, you're good. Of course, as you know, there are new PowerShell commands are coming out as we speak, but it pretty much has all the basic thing. Pretty much you can do anything you want to do with that, the commands, if you know in there. Okay? So everybody able to resize. The goal here is also is that I want you guys to know how to create the VM, using PowerShell statement, how to connect to the VM, how to resize the VM. Also, I want you guys to be aware of all the properties, parameters in the VM that you need to be aware of before you create the VM. So that is the main goal of today. Everybody, was it okay to do that? Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, May, quick question, May.
Sure.
Since we could not update the VM with PowerShell to update the OS, can we do that through the portal?
Yeah, you can do the portal. That's how I was showing. If you can't do it, then do it in the portal. See if you can do it in the portal. You might not have permission. I don't know. Permission is a different situation. And so I can't do it in your site either. That's why I had my own site. I was doing it in my own site. But try it. It's not going to hurt you. So in the portal, go ahead and open the VM. And in the middle section, when you open the VM, it open up in the overview blade. And so when you see that overview, if you scroll down on that middle section, under the setting, you'll see it says size. And if you don't see, you can look at my screen as well. And so it will show up and say that what the VM you have. It will say what is your subscription, is pay as you go, what's the region, your current size is what. So tell you the current size, and you'll see a list of size there. Pick one of the size that you want and click on that, highlight that and click the resize blue button at the bottom. That will resize it as well.
Sure, me.
Perfect. Everybody able to find it? Were you able to find it? So again, in the portal, go into a virtual machines in your menu bar, click on virtual machine. It will see you'll see all the virtual machines that you have in that particular, that associated with you. You can choose any VM anyway. And when you open up the VM, always the VM will open up in the overview blade. And in that overview, its overview is highlighted in kind of light blue. In that middle section, if you scroll down under the settings, you should see size. So if you click on size, it will show up. And right above that table is what? The size of your current size. So make sure you look at the current size, and you can either downgrade or upgrade it. And highlight the size in the list, the table list you want, and click on the blue button resize. Everybody able to resize it? Do not stop your VM. We don't want to stop and start. That takes a long time. We don't need it. We want to keep that VM. Are we all happy? Are we happy, campers? Are we happy?
Wait.
No? Did somebody say wait?
I was able to resize.
You have resized it. Okay, so you could resize it in the PowerShell, but you were able to resize it in the VM?
I didn't try in the VM. I used the PowerShell.
Oh, you would do it in the PowerShell. Okay, did somebody, I just wanted to see, but I think you should have the same permission. If you're not able to do it in PowerShell, I doubt you can do it in the portal.
I guess I was able to do it through portal, but PowerShell was a problem. It said successfully resized.
Okay. That's interesting. Maybe the statement maybe we have some flaws in the statement too. So that's the thing with PowerShell. And, it takes a while to get used to PowerShell command lines too. So, but everybody happy? Everybody to resize and we're good, guys? Are we good to go to the next one? Are we happy? Are you guys all happy?
Yes.
Talk to me. Okay. All right. So the next one is we're going to create and manage a virtual machine disk. This is very important in a virtual machine. So we'll have temporary disk, we'll have data disk, we'll have, we can attach prepared data disk. Normally we like to attach, if I'm creating a VM, I like to attach the data disk because that way I can take that data disk and attach to any VM. I'm not associated to just that VM only. So you can see that. So everything in Azure is an object, and they're separate objects. So you can kind of you can take the disk from one VM and put it to another. So you can kind of do all that. So that's a whole purpose of, advantages using cloud instead of having local, on premises. So keep that in mind that, you want to see them as a separate object. You got to see, when you're looking at Azure portal, you have to see them in cloud in general. Azure cloud, you got to see them in separate objects. You got to see them in separate layers so that you can take the most advantage of that, okay? So, of course, in a VM, it's important to choose a disk size and configuration appropriate to the expected workload. However, if I'm doing also like the data disk is also, if you have it as a separate disk, you can take that and put it in another VM to test things. If let's say a new version update came up, you can update it to that, to the disk only. Take that disk to another VM, play with it. It's not going to hurt the production because the production is still going, but you're testing on a different machine. And you take that data disk when it's all set and done and good, you just attach it back to the production. So there's no downtime. So using attached data disk is very common. So we have, also you can have a operating system disk as well. So you can set a operating system disk and you can attach it to any virtual machine also, which is pretty cool, I think. So operating system disk can be up to 4 terabytes, host the VM's operating system. This is assigned to a drive letter or C by default. The disk caching configuration of operating system disk is optimized for operating system performance. The disk should not host application or data. For application data, use a data disk, which is detailed. We'll talk about data disk later. So notice that when in Azure, that's I want you guys to see them as a separate object. Another way to look at it is like separate pieces. So when you guys were young, you guys play like Lego. So each of them has in Azure, everything is a separate block. And you can just, depends on what block you want to use. You can take a block from one and put it in the other, take this one and put it over there. So you can reassemble it however you want. So that's the beauty of using cloud. Every object is independent. Does that make sense? So you can also create a temporary disk. It's to solid state drive is located on the Azure host at the VM. Temporary disks are highly performant and may be used for operation temporary data processing. And sometimes also if you go in to upload a huge amount of data, you can put it in temporary disk and attach the temporary disk. Temporary disk by default is assigned a D, right? But you can change it. You can change the default on the disk. So Azure Data Disk, again, we're going to talk about Azure Data Disk, can be added for installing applications and storing data. Applications can be any applications, web applications, database, anything. It should be used in any situation. Doable, responsive data storage is needed. Cyber virtual machine determines how many data disks can be attached to a VM. So VM, because virtual machine has to support that the disk from the memory standpoint. So there are limitations that how many data disks you can attach to a virtual machine. Normally, I was told it can depend on the size, but if you have a good VM size, virtual machine size, you can attach up to 64 data disks. However, I would not prefer you guys do that. The most data disks I attach is 4 to one VM. So VM disk type, we have a standard disk, which is HDD, and we have premium disk, high performance. Of course, HDD is the cheapest, cost effective, but it is a very slow performance-wise. It is not the best performance. So I would normally, if you have a data, we call it is not a hot data, which means that people do not need to access it all the time. They only access it maybe once a month or so, and that type of stuff. It's not high traffic. Then you can put it in HDD. But if you need this disk to put in application is a highly demand in high demand, you need to make sure that you put it in SSD. Okay, so which has a higher performance. And within that also, even in SSD, you have different types. Premium disk depends on how much disk you need, how much disk space you need, what type of performance you need. That's what's going to vary. So again, everything is associated with price. So, okay. All right, so before we go into lab 2, let's take a 10-minute break. Everybody good with that? About 20 to 30. Let's come back at 8:40. Right now it's about 22. So let's come back about 8:40. That should give everybody enough time to do what you want to do. And that's all the break we're taking anyway. So 8:40 my time, California. I'm sorry, not California, Eastern Standard Time. All right. So go get your coffee, anything. If anybody wants to talk to me, I'm here as well. I'm just going to run to the bathroom real quick, but I'll be back.
Sure.
I am back if anybody needs to talk to me. If anybody needs me. Nobody needs me? Fine. Nobody wants me? Fine.
I will call if it is needed. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
No, if needed, I will just ping you back again. We know that you are online, so we can ping you back.
I'm not muted. Are you talking about sharing?
No, I'm talking to you. If needed, we will just ping you. That's what I said.
Okay. If you need me to let me know.
Yes, or we'll call out to the phone.
So we still got a couple minutes for people. So how's the weather over there? Is the weather nice or is that hot already?
It's getting hotter.
It's getting hotter. How hot does it get? I mean, I know like Burma gets like 110 and stuff like that. You guys get that hot?
I'm based out of Atlanta, so it's around 80.
Oh, okay, so you're more like Florida, yeah. But Florida today is not hot. Today's been kind of crowded. You know, can't say sunshine in Florida because it's not sun's not shining today. What part of Atlanta are you on?
Their lives all in the name of Allah. Watch this.
Okay, we're hearing some video stuff. Okay. All right. Thank you for muting. All right. So everybody back. We are going to go back into the Azure portal. We're going to do the lab. Hopefully, let's look at the document first before we go in and do that. And hopefully, I have the right statement this time. Hopefully. Okay, now notice that even though if you open the statement in a notepad, make sure that you use the right resource group name, and all that good stuff. If we're creating, again, we don't need to create a new VM. We can use the same VM we have. So the very first step is talking about create the virtual machine with, and these are for, we want make it independent from each lab. So if you don't do the first lab, you can still do this one. So the step one, we can use the same VM. So we don't need to create another one. Everybody good with that, right? Because that takes time to create it also. The step two we're going to create, so before we go in and do that, I wanted to make sure we have explanation here. We're going to create an additional configuration with AZ disk config. We're going to tell them that what the configuration we want it, what location you want it. So make sure that the disk configuration location, the location we use in there is the same location that you created the VM. If you're not sure, go back to the portal and look at your VM, and in the overview blade, it will tell you what region you created in. So make sure you go to create the disk in the same region. So we can't just cut and paste directly, guys, okay? We have to look at some of that. Again, we do not create the VM. We're going to use the same VM we have. We're going to start at step two, okay? So create option is empty. We say that, hey, we just format the disk. We want an empty format disk. Disk size is we're using 128 gigabyte. So it's just a small size. We're doing like 1 terabyte and stuff, but you can create as many different disk size gigabyte you want it in. So we're going to create a 128 gigabyte disk. Now, once we have that disk, we have a data disk, which is, think of it like you have an external hard drive, right? That we have that, with the USB port we can attach to our, our desktop computer. The same thing, that's the disk we have. Now we have a disk that's virtual, but we have that disk. That disk does not belong to anybody yet. It's just a disk itself, right? So, so after we create a disk configuration, then we are going to go in and create a data disk. So whatever, here's that we are assigning a parameter value. So this is we have a variable disk config. So we're using disk config. So whatever you use here, that name has to match here. So that, or you can just paste this whole, the new Azure from this into that disk config instead of using a variable. We do like to use variable a lot because later we'll show you how to write a script. When we do a script, it's a lot easier to with variables. So you guys are developer, you guys know that. So we're going to create the data disk. And we name your, okay, so you can also use the, make sure we use the same resource group name and make sure that the disk name, whatever you want to create the disk name, make sure you remember your disk name. Okay? And that disk is going to be 120 gigabyte is what we did. So once we create that, now we have to attach that disk to a VM. So we can attach to again the existing VM we just created today, attached to that VM. So here you got to make sure that you're going to choose the right resource group name that you have the VM in, and you're going to use the right VM name, okay? And we're going to attach, so the data disk, again, the disk that we created is just an empty disk. Now we are going to attach that disk to a VM, because if not, it's just a disk. You can't do anything on a disk until you attach it to a VM. So you can put stuff into the disk as well, but we're going to attach it to the VM. Then we also go to update the virtual machine. So we have to make sure we update the virtual machine. So now the virtual machine recognizes the disk. And now we are going to prepare that data disk. So we go to do again remote desktop again. We just connect to the VM. We've done it before. And in the PowerShell script, we are, okay, this is a script. This is not a command. So because of PowerShell script, you're going to copy and paste that into a notepad and make it a PS1 file. Everybody good with that, right? And you're going to run the PowerShell. This is the PowerShell in your VM. So once earlier we saw that empty VM, we got to go in and open a notepad, paste this into that, and make sure that you know the PS1.ps1 extension, and you're going to run that. And then we go into storage. We can verify that data disk. You can verify it in the portal, or you can verify with that command that data disk is created. And the data disk is attached. So we make sure that the data disk is attached. So notice that create option is attached. So that's what we're going to go do. Everybody good with that, right? We're not going to create a VM. We are going to create the disk. So notice that you have to, when you create a disk, we just created a disk config variable here. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can just copy and paste that and put it in the disk config here as well. Everybody got that, right? So we are starting at step 2. And hopefully this time, we have the right VM disk script here. And you don't have to take my word. Make sure you look at it that it matched. Again, we are not creating the VM. So we already tested earlier. You can connect to that VM. Everybody able to? And we're going to start the disk config statement here. Make sure you put the right location for the disk that you want to create. You want to create the disk in the same location where the VM is. You don't have to, but it's make it easier because it will be in the same, so it's easier to the VM to see the data, the disk, and for performance wise. So we're going to stop at step 2, guys. Everybody good? So we start the disk config at step 2, and you should have it. You should have that in a notepad file as well. And make sure you change it in here to make sure the location match what your location is. Any questions? We're all good? Ready to rock and roll? And let's go ahead. We're good? Okay. So we are going to open that nice shell and keep closing on me for today. And make sure that you're in PowerShell mode. I don't know, is that the machine or my network is slow today? All right. So we're going to create the variable called diskconfig. All right. Once my diskconfig, and like I said earlier, make sure that your diskconfig is matched the location. So my resource group. Okay, I'm going to put it in the same resource group. Group VMM. Okay. All right. Okay. Resource group.
Hey, May.
Yes.
So the new AZM stands for New Azure VM, right?
Yeah. So that's why we're not doing that. We're going to go to
Yes,
step
we can
two.
skip that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, because we
Got
already
it.
created the VM. Yeah, but I want to be able to you guys to do that each individually as well. If you just want that one module only, so that's why I put it in there. But yeah, yeah, let's not create
Got
that
it.
VM because it takes a while to create it. You know, but make sure that when you guys copy pasting from that the notepad file, the disk config, create and manage VM disk, make sure you put the right location and, do the appropriate changes is what I'm saying, to make sure that in the data disk also command, make sure that your group name is correct, resource group name is correct. Okay?
Got it.
Okay. Uh-oh, we're listening to music. It's not mine. Somebody put us on hold. Well, I don't mind, but some people might mind. So we created 3 variables, the disk config data disk. Data disk could take a little bit time. And then we're creating my VM. Okay, so after we added data disk, the third parameter is that my VM, and then we create a VM. My VM, tell the resource group name. So you make sure that you change it to the appropriate resource group name as well as your VM name for that. So we create a third variable, which is my VM variable. So now we have 3 variables. Then the last statement we're running there, and not last statement for this, using those variables. So VM add Azure VM data disk. VM is the my VM at my VM MM in my case. Add the name my data disk. Make sure you change it appropriately. And create option is attach. So we're going to attach a managed disk, the data disk.id. So data disk is from that variable we created from that data disk is going to give us the ID for the data disk. So we are creating, this last one is the variable for variable VM, which is the most important one as well. Again, make sure that if you change the data disk and stuff, make sure you choose the right one. Anybody have a question? My data disk, it didn't like my VM port. Okay, let's see what.
I'm getting an error in data disk actually.
Yeah, add a data disk. I'm having the same one. Okay, let me go back to the document. The data disk. Okay, we got all the variables and VM. Okay. Okay.
I think the V.
It should be, yeah. It's whatever you name that variable. That's what you say, right? That's what I see the error. The VM is it should be my VM there. Right, the data disk config. Okay, do I have the name?
So if I want to rewrite the variable VM, I can still rerun the command, right? Same command. If I want to change the value.
Yes.
The VM name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Let me see. There's some syntax error here. Hold on. There's a syntax error here. Okay. So the VM here is we're using the my VM. The name is, but here's in my data disk. Yeah, okay, so they're creating their own group. They're just there. Not using what I wanted to. What did I name my data disk? I think this is where don't we need to put the data disk instead of putting the name there? Because we are supposed to use my VM data disk.id. Data disk, yeah, I think that's what it is. Let me see if that works. Okay, out of this, it's okay, so say VM is my VM. The name should be the data disk. Create option is attach. Hash manage disk ID. Data disk.id. Why is it saying it's not the same? I run all of these before. I don't know. Every time I don't seem like I have a different problem. Okay.
It works for me, the same command.
Okay, so did you change anything? I mean, did you change the...
The only thing I had to change is the, I think I changed, I'll tell you, like I had to change one thing.
It worked for me. I just had to change the resource group name to mine. Everything else I kept the same.
Resource group name, why you change your resource group name in this VM statement here?
In pretty much every statement.
We got to change the resource group name. But here in this state, under the dash name, did you guys just leave the data disk?
Yeah, I left it the same.
I actually changed that to my own disk name.
Okay.
That I created.
Okay, that's what I thought. I did that, but I didn't like it. Okay, let me try that again. And the funny part is that I run all of these before, but I think when I changed different name, okay, so manage this ID.
I put that in the double quotes, the name.
Oh, because, okay, but do we want to create it in the same disk that we created earlier though, right? So we wanted to make sure we use the same disk name that we used earlier.
That's correct.
Well, okay, I use a different one in here. Oh, I think I created in a different group. Just hold on. I gotta go look at my VM resource group. Hold on. I think I created a different resource group. That's what happened when I had too many resource groups. Yeah, that's what's causing it. Because it's in my resource group VM. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if I create that in that resource group VM, I need to change that here. Okay, if you got that working, keep continue so you see what the outcome is. Name, so my VM. Oh, we didn't create okay, I know why I didn't create the resource group. Okay, so I already have a resource group. With that resource group, okay, I already have a data disk MM there. So my data disk MM is there. Why did they not like that? Okay, I'm not going to waste my time here. All right, so you guys able to run it? Okay, so we didn't, because we went into doing this. Oh, we started the disk config here. Right, all right, resource group name, my resource group name. Disk name, my data disk MM. Okay, we got that there. The data disk should be good. That one more time. All right, everybody able to run the rest of it too? So the next thing we did is we did the update and get the IP address. So the most important thing is also to do that. Go back to the steps here. We need to make sure, I'll go back and fix that thing in a second. Once you have update that, we need to make sure you can connect, go back into the portal, go back to the VM, and make sure you run the PowerShell script. Everybody able to do that? So continue with that.
Actually, while running the update command, I'm getting error saying that a disk at LAN1 already exists. Error code invalid parameter.
LAN1 already exists. Okay. In the VM you created. So go back and go look at your in your disk to see if you have. I mean, go back in the portal to look at to see if have any LAN. If you have a LAN created on that disk, it should display in your. Go into the disk, you should see it. So if you go back into the portal, hold on. I'm going to try to show you here.
I'm under the disk on the portal.
Yeah, hold on a second. Yeah, I will try to minimize it. Okay, see if I have a disk created or not. No, that's only disk. Okay, hold on. If I look into the disk, so I'm trying to see where we would see the LAN you have. Let me see if we have. But I don't think you can change the LAN. If say one, it already exists.
Where do you see that LAN created?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking to. Hold on a second. I know. So if you go into your disk, you should see under the disk, you should see that if you have more than one, it should show in the summary, but I don't have one yet. Go back to my resource group and into this here. Attached. Okay, mine is not attached yet. So but are you in the same? But you guys are having. You have your own. You have your own VM, right? So you shouldn't have LAN1. But can you look at the syntax? I think it's more a syntax then, though. I really doubt you already have LAN1 because this is the resource group. You just created today, right? Right. You should be having that problem. Okay, let me go into my VM. My VM. Anybody has the same problem? She said you're having problems that. No. Nobody else having that problem?
No, I was able to update it.
Okay. Can you look at the syntax?
No, the syntax error says that LUN1 already exists.
But that, okay, so what I want to make sure that, do you create it in your VM? Because if you didn't create it, you should have it in there. I mean, everybody is separate, right? So I don't think you should see it. But when you go into your disk in the portal, do you see you have a LUN in there? You don't see anything under your data disk, do you? Yeah, we haven't attached that. Yeah, go into in the portal, go into your resource group, and when you in the resource group, in your resource group you should be in. When you look at the list, you should see your disk there. You see a disk there?
Yes.
Okay, open the disk.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, but you don't. Yeah, we haven't attached anything. So I just want to see if you don't. I know, but I'm trying to figure out. I know there is where I can look at it. I can't remember top of my head here. Activity log, did it say? Okay. Has I created updated disk? Did it say? Oh.
So I'm on the disk overview page and I don't see it.
You don't see that? No. I thought you have it is what I'm thinking. Okay, if you have one, let's change it to 2 to see if you can create it. But I don't think you have one.
I did with 4 by giving the name as 4.
Yeah, just number 4?
Yeah, but still I got the same error. It was still referring to LUN1, though I changed it to 4. Let's try again.
Trying to figure out how. Okay. I want to go back to my resource group. My resource group.
Yeah, I just changed the LUN as 6 and I ran the update command. It was still referring to a disk at LUN1 already exists. Error message.
So you can't create because it's already exists, and when we do.
Yes.
And it won't let you create 2 either. If it's 1 already, we should be able to create 2 or 3. Depends on what you choose in the operating system. But that's a problem though, because you can't move unless you have that. Just. I'm trying to find a different automate to see if I have a disk there. Virtual machine. Okay. Nope. I have to look it up to see why you're getting that error. But as you have the right syntax, but nobody else had the problem, right? Are you the only one having the problem?
Looks like.
At least they're not talking if they had it. But everybody else were able to create it.
Yes.
Oh, no. So it has to be something that we're doing, unless it's something on the previous statement that we didn't choose the right one or something.
So what you're saying is after creating the LUN, right? So it should show up on your disk page, overview page.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure it's on overview page because I don't think they just changed it out.
Maybe guys whoever created, can you let us know how to view the LUN creation, once it is created?
You should be looking under the disk, but under the disk I'm not seeing, but I don't know mine. I haven't created one here, but I did create one on my data disk go back to the resource group, group VMM, data disk Again, I have 2 disks, okay. But I don't, normally I see it in the property, but I don't see it in the property today, which I thought it's in the property. But it's not in the property in mine, or in the configuration. I'm still looking. It's not in the there's only two places I can think of. It's in the property or the configuration, but it's neither on them. But I know I saw it yesterday. I'm trying to remember. Where did I see it? But mine, data disk MM, there is a LUN there. Manage disk. See if I can find it in. No one can find it either? Okay, Valley is okay. So I could try that. Okay, on the VM. Okay, go to disk management. Okay, so I need to go to VM. Okay, let me go into the VM and that resource group. So go into the VM and the disk management. So I think it's in my VMM. I think maybe it's under disk here.
Yeah, it is in disks within the VM.
It tells you the disk, but I don't see. Okay, so they're saying
So in my case, it shows it under the data disk.
that's
One
what.
below.
Okay, so it show under the data disk.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's a LAN associated to your data disk, it shows that. But I'm not seeing. But you see it in the overview tab. That's what we're trying to find. Is that in the VM or in the disk?
It's in the VM.
Yeah. Okay.
Under the disk.
Yeah, when you click this, okay, like I'm doing now. So,
Okay.
and it shows
Under
LAN
data
one
disk.
there. Okay, go back to my
Yes.
other one disk. Okay, let me go to this disk here. I had two disks. Hold on a second. So it's normally used to call disk management. Okay, I need to go into the VM. This VM. I will see who that VM is associated with. Okay, so you have to, so did you hear what he was saying, that in the resource group, go into the VM that you associated the disk with?
Yeah, I don't see that under that actually.
Because yours didn't create it yet though, right?
Yes, yes.
But yours hasn't created, but so you won't see it. But you say LAN 1 is not acceptable is what you're getting.
I think it already exists, and if I try to create a different LAN, but still the same error.
It won't let you do that. Okay. Well, if it say it's already existed, try to do the update to see it will update it to that, updated.
No, I get this error only when I run the update command.
Oh, you had it when you run the update command?
Yes.
Oh, not when you run this one. Okay, I thought you were doing that.
No.
Okay, so
when I run the update command.
Okay, so you're able to attach to the data disk, but you say you don't see the data disk. Do you see the data disk in your VM? When you're in the virtual machine and when you go to the disk, do you see the disk in the virtual machine? And
I see the disk. Yes, I see the disk, but I don't see the data. I don't see the data disk.
You don't see the data disk.
Yes, that's what he said, right? I believe Pradeep, he mentioned that the LAN will be created under the data disk.
Yeah, it's showing up against the data disk.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine say no data disk either though. Okay, so when you creating the okay, so we're missing the data to somehow. Let me go back to the documentation. Oh, the data just is not going to be there until you run the PowerShell script, though. We run the update is not going to get it, right?
No, but when I run the update command,
You're
I'm
getting
running
an
into an error. Yes, so I'm not able to proceed with the next step where you'll be running the script. I'm stuck at step number six.
Step 6. Okay, all right. But even that, can you try to connect and run that script to see? I'm saying I don't think they're letting us up. Maybe you don't have it. Another thing I can think of is you don't have update permission. That's the only thing I can think of.
Now, if it's a permission error, it should tell me, right? That I mean, you don't have a
You never
privilege
know
or
with
something.
these. Yeah, I mean, you never know with the syntax though. I mean, you never know with these systems. I don't, know what error they give sometimes. But anybody in your let's do this. Anybody in your group able to do that except you, and so people in your group should have the same permission, right? Are you guys having the same permission as her? I mean, can you guys still do that, or anybody having update problem? I haven't run my update though. I want to see if I have just my VM. I still think, well, we could go. You want to go back and create a VM and redo the whole thing just to make sure
I'll
that.
do it later. I'll do it later. I mean, let's continue with the session.
Yeah. But I mean, you can still connect to the VM, right? Go ahead and connect to the VM and run the script just to see what happened.
Yes.
If the disk already exists, I'm just curious. To see if we can do that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. If it's a permission, they should tell you permission, but you can never trust these error messages. Or at least I don't trust them. Okay, so yeah, because you can run that data disk and nothing showing up there. Now, mine shows up in LUN 1 because I'm able to run that statement. But you don't see anything under the data disk, but it's saying that you cannot update to LUN 1. That is weird. So
okay, I'll try this lab later, maybe during my.
Sure, but can you tell me the error message? I just want to make sure. So it is.
I just pinged you in the chat, actually.
Ah, okay, thank you. Yeah. Update ACV, complete collection, fully qualified at myazure.commands compute update VM command. I still think it's the update you're having an update. Okay, there's gotta be syntax. Can you? Okay, let me look at the syntax. Can you paste the syntax that you type into? Okay, so that. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Resource group. Okay. $sign VM. Update. So that's some error code. Invalid parameter. Okay. So there is they don't like the parameter in the update. I'm thinking that, did you copy it from the Word file or did you copy it from the Notepad?
I had copied in my Notepad and from there.
Okay, so
I copied, yeah.
Let's see, when I'm looking at that, I still think it's a syntax error. Right before we get the disk, there's a syntax error. I can't see the syntax error, you know what I mean? But it's saying that, okay? So, but if I'm looking at your update ACVM, is that the statement you're typing in? Resource group name, my resource group, VM. Okay, after the VM, where is it? My resource group name, VM. This is, you're doing the update statement, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let me look at the update statement. So update resource group name, my resource group, VM, $. That, okay, so update ACVM. So, yeah, but the fully qualified error, so it is saying something that we have an error message. I don't understand that, but it seemed like it's not recognizing something. So error target data dis.lunch to code 400. That request error message a dis.lun one already exists. They always say that, but update ECVM a dis.lun one already exists. Yeah, there is somewhere we're having a syntax error. Or something we can't see. All right, I'll let you go back and retry it. So let's move on with the rest of you guys. Were you guys able
Okay,
to?
one quick question before we move on, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So now, so I'm getting error at the last update command, right? So in case if I close my session and if I open a new PowerShell, so if I run the update,
no, you'll
that's not
lose
gonna
all
help.
you'll lose all your parameters that you created.
Parameters, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
do I need
you'll
to?
lose. You have to recreate them. You'll lose all of them. Each session has their own. So what I meant by that is that everything you started with the $sign, the disconfig, data disk, all of them, you got to rewrite all the things that with the $sign.
So only from the parameters I have to rerun.
All the variables, yep. All the variables you had to redone.
Got it.
Okay. All right. Anybody able to go into PowerShell and connect and run the PowerShell statement?
I'm getting the same error. A disk at LUN1 already exists when I ran the update statement.
Are you when you run an update, you have the same error? Okay. So I'm thinking, is that a permission issue? Are you guys using the same subscription? Any of you guys? Are you using with is that Ganga? I'm sorry if I don't pronounce the name right.
Ganga.
Are you guys in the same same subscription?
No, I'm in a different subscription.
Okay, but are you getting the same error as her? Do you see her error message in the Skype?
Let me check.
Yeah, she's the only one who has it today so far. That's what the error she's getting is error code invalid parameter. So I'm still thinking it's somewhere we're not seeing, but make sure that that whole statement is in one line when you kind of paste it into PowerShell.
Yeah, I'm getting the same error as Ganga. So who was able to successfully run this, like this command, update command?
I was able to run it. Anybody else, guys? I mean, I know some people run it.
Yeah, I was able to run it.
Are you guys in the same subscription with them?
Yes. Yeah, yes, Prakash, I was able to run it.
Okay, so you saw that they said they were able to update. They were able to run the update command. So it definitely seemed like it's a syntax error. Can you guys make sure either type it up or you can make sure they're in the same line? I mean, I know sometimes I have to do it a couple times because it's so close. The names are so close. First, make sure that you're using the right resource group name and the resource group dis and the variable, the VM, or whatever you name it. But it seemed like some of you guys were able to run it, okay? But people who were able to run it, were you guys able to go in and create the, prepare the data disk? Were you guys able to run, anybody able to run the PowerShell script, guys?
Yeah, I was able to run.
Okay, so you got the whole 9 yards, okay. All right, so some people were able to do it, some people are not. I don't know why that is, but and make sure that your variables are all set correctly too, though. Today's not my day for some reason. Okay, but I know the IP address. I don't need to worry about the IP address. Okay, I know why, because my name were not set up right. My resource group name. But if you don't, earlier I showed you also that you can get your resource group, not resource group, your VM IP address pretty easy. You can get it in the portal as well, so you don't have to worry about if you don't have it. The resource group, VMM, open up the VMM, and your resource group. You can look up your IP address. Your IP address should be the same IP address you had it earlier anyway. So once you have the IP address Was everybody able to run it? Once you have your IP address, connect and go into run the PowerShell on that machine, and go
Yes.
come back to the PowerShell and run that storage file data disk, and everybody got the output.
Yes, I got the output, but the disk size GB is still null. It doesn't say 128.
It doesn't say, oh, that's not right. Then, so what that means is that some reason it created the data disk that default size instead of the size that you assigned earlier. So that's something in the parameter we missed that is causing that. Anybody will see the data disk as 128? I'm kind of running and I haven't got that far, but let me try it to see. Everybody able to see the disk size, and you got the disk size correct? Nobody that far yet? Or are you just not telling us? Hold on, I'll try to get there to see if mine disk size shows or not. These users. Give me a second. Still not starting yet. I thought it shows up, and what happened? Is that the right one? The 142. Sorry, just taking time. 131.142, yep. Okay, what happened to my operating system? I think I'm running out of disk space here. Let me try it again. Anybody able to see the disk size correctly? Nobody that far yet? Nobody's talking to us? Please wait for local session manager. Take a while. Maybe it's taking a little longer. So I'll let that run for a second. But that's very interesting that you're not seeing the disk size. So the disk size, it's using the default disk size is what's happening. What's everybody got a different problem? Now, if you go back into the data disk on the portal, what do you see though?
Checking on that.
So under the data disk, it should show you the size. And I'll go back into the virtual machine and click on disk. It should say your size. You don't see anything on the size there? Then we're in trouble.
So when I RDP to the virtual machine, I see two drives. One is C drive and another one is D drive. The C drive is 126 GB and the other one is 14 GB. The temporary storage, which is D drive.
No, okay, but I don't know what that all that stuff is about. In the portal, like if you look at my screen, you open up your VM and go under the setting, go to the disk. Under the data disk, what is the size showing?
Yeah, I see 128, the same what you're saying.
Okay, so that's good. Then that's fine. I don't know why it's not displaying. Maybe there's a syntax in that statement. Maybe that's why it's not displaying. Anybody made it that far? But we're looking at storage profile.
Prakash, actually, you will not see directly on the VM. So once you log in, so you need to go to the server manager, then tools, and if you go to the disk management, you will see it there, and you need to right click, and then you have to allocate it, and then only you can see it on.
But you can't, when you run that statement and that step 16 here, step 12 in the portal, you don't see this output? You should see that output.
Yeah. When I ran that in the PowerShell, I see that 128 GB
Okay. Are you saying that you don't see it in the
VM.
In the VM itself? You're not saying it. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, my VM don't come up at all. I think I'm running out of memory there. So, okay. But everybody able to do some? Able to do except I know Genka and another person were not able to run that update statement.
No, I just rerun the lab and I was able to create, past that update, I was able to create the LAN.
Oh, okay. So I don't know what happened the first time, huh? Did you find
I don't know. Yeah, it's really weird. I just changed the variable name and everything, the disk name, and I rerun and I was able to proceed.
That's why it's like sometimes with the PowerShell, that's the thing. Sometimes you can't see, you can't see. So all right, good. At least everybody able to run it, able to see your disk size and all that. You're able to connect to the VM.
I'm not at there, May actually.
You're not that far yet, but you got the data disk to create.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So some people are still working on it. So at least that makes me happy. I'm like, you can't run that update command. I'm like, okay, never seen that error problem.
Yeah, I cannot see the disk size yet.
You cannot see the disk size in the VM in the portal or
in
where?
In the PowerShell. In the VM it shows up.
Okay, in the PowerShell it doesn't show up. Huh. So there got to be a syntax error in there then. So when you're doing storage profile dot data disk, okay, so the VM, so the VM dot storage profile dot data disk. Now you know it's a dot, right? So VM dot storage profile dot data disk.
That's right.
Okay. Okay, you know that? Okay. Storage, okay, sorry. It's a storage profile dot data disk. Hold on, let me double check something here. Storage profile dot data disk. Okay. So what did we assign the VM? This is so instead of that $sign VM variable, you can replace with the whole thing. So you pretty much we just want to know that storage profile data disk parameter. But you can see it in there. Data disk. I don't know, you guys are all, today is being a Monday. I'm not sure why we're having a weird stuff, but the interesting is that the statement works because that's why you see some stuff, but you're not seeing the disk, the size of the disk, though. That's weird. Anybody able to run that VM storage profile.data disk and see the output correctly?
I was able to do that.
Okay, so does we know the statement is correct? All I can tell is that it's a Monday, so it's acting weird. It's only 9:30 in the morning. I need to go clean up my machine because I think I'm running out of disk space here. Do you wanted to close down? Did you turn off the PowerShell at all? I mean, will you open a new session or is that okay? You didn't shut down at all. Okay.
No.
If you'd shut down, I can see that might be a problem. That's not a syntax error. So here, some of you guys are already been there, done that. So if you want to, you can look at my screen or you can follow along as well. It's not in the book, but you can edit data disk just from the portal. site if you guys want to try that. So once you're under the data disk, you have that plus add a data disk button. Then it'll say you have no managed data disk. So you can go and create a disk. So here also give you option. You can create the disk name, everything like that as well. In the resource, I've created the same resource group. The values 11, okay. Match file, resource group. Already, there's already a resource the same name, the current resource group. So I can put it, I want to put the same resource group. So because you put it in the same resource group, it doesn't value location and all that not available. Account type, 1023 gigabyte. The default, you can change that. I'll change it 120.
Hey, me?
Yes.
So when I run the command from the remote desktop PowerShell, right? So it's asking me, do you want to format my disk? Is that what we're supposed to expect?
No, I don't know. Any of you guys got that? I didn't get that. I don't remember getting that. But you can format because there's nothing there anyway. If you want to format, go ahead, click.
No, I just wanted to check. I just want to check if I'm on the right, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't get that though.
I didn't get it.
I didn't get it either. So, yeah. So if you're trying to create the disk, I was just trying to show you guys that we don't need to create it. But if you want to create a disk right from the portal and under your VM, you can just click that add disk, and you can go in and create a disk there. Is that everybody see that what I was saying? So you can go ahead and create one in there as well. I'm not going to create more because I'm running out of disk space here. But you can create it right then and there too instead of using the PowerShell command. Everybody good so far? I know you're still, Genga, you're still trying to do that. I don't know why you're getting a format the disk, but you can't because nothing in there yet. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
But it's interesting why you're getting it.
Yeah, that's my point actually. Why am I
Yeah.
getting that? Yeah.
Because nobody else get it, so I know I didn't get it. What can I tell? You're too special.
The command, whatever the script, whatever you gave says format volume, right? So that's what the script is doing.
But it should format the default for us. It will not.
No, it's not doing the default. It's doing my data disk.
Okay.
That's what the command we are giving, right? In the script,
Yeah,
format volume, the file.
Yeah, but it should come up and ask. It should have formatted for you.
So that's what we are doing, right? So it is supposed to format the data disk.
Yeah. By default, it will format it. Yeah.
Oh, well, that was my question. Okay.
Okay. So everybody able to get all that working, and we're happy with creating this. Also, I'll show you guys that you can create the disk in the VM in the portal as well. So instead of running all that statement, you can do it right there as well. Everybody able to create that in the PowerShell, and also able to run it from your remote on the VM. You're able to see your disk and everything. So we attach it. You're good.
So if we close the PowerShell session, right, in the Azure portal, so if I run the command, what is that command? Storage profile.
That you will, if you already close it, then you have to go get a variable value for that parameter. That VM, the $VM, they won't know what it is. You just have to run that $VM again. Yeah, that's only tricky with the because it's the variables is only live in that session. Apparently.
So if I'm going to run that, right, that's going to create a one more LUN again, right? That's what the command is, right? If I just want to set the variable alone, there should be some other command, right?
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying, because you just want to, we don't want to create another.
Yes, I just want to rerun my variables.
We don't want to create, Yeah, we don't want to attach another one.
So,
Yeah. So another thing that you have to look at the command, but what I want you to do also is that, can you look in you can see your data disk there, right? Can you look at in the VM, in the portal, to see you have your data disk with 128 gigabyte?
Can I go there?
Yeah, so go back into the VM and go under the disk, under the setting.
Yes, I see the size is 128. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's what we want to be able to see.
I think Portal is better than PowerShell, I believe.
Well, I mean, it is, but but for like, I don't know, I normally don't do the PowerShell at all. For typing, it's hard for me, but if most developers and administrators, they like the PowerShell. Yeah, that's why I do a lot of cut and paste, as you can see, because and trying to sit and type at the same time talking is a lot even harder. So easier test to do is always, but like I said earlier, there are some tasks that you can only do it in PowerShell that you cannot do it in the portal. And that's more related to administrative type of stuff, though. Some administrative stuff is Joy, Azure AD, Active Directory and stuff. Some of the tests, you must do it in PowerShell. All right, everybody able to do PowerShell, and you got to see your data disk, and we created a VM. We attached a data disk to a VM. Are we all happy? We're ready to move?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Thanks for responding. Okay, the next one is even better and more even important to me, I would think, or important functionality in Azure, which is high availability. So let's talk about what is high availability. So high availability, when you purchase Azure subscription from Microsoft, Microsoft has a SLA, which is service level agreement. So service level agreement saying that the standard is 99.99%. So 99.99% means that I think downtime in the whole year is, I can't remember top of my head, but maybe let's say 1 day, right? So Microsoft guarantees that your data will be only down no more than a day. But some organizations say, oh, no, we can't afford to go down in the whole year. We can't afford to go down 24 hours. We want it more than that. So just so you know, the 99.99% SLA, you can go up to 699, which means 99.99999, which means that you only have, if I remember correctly, is about 3 minutes downtime in the entire year. But the higher SLA, the more you pay, okay? So also we can set up another way you can also set up is the availability. So when we're doing availability means that you have multiple machines going to be in one. We're going to group them availability set. So in each availability set, you can have one primary and you can have 8 secondary. So each availability set, you can have 9 machines. One primary, 8 secondary. So one primary, so when that primary goes down, the primary secondary 1 going to kick in, secondary 2 going to kick in if you set up 8 secondary. So definitely we're going to say, hey, not 9 machines not going to go down at the same time, right? So the high availability is very different from load balancing. I understand that because high availability means that in that availability set, only one machine is running at the same time. When you do load balancing is very different. Because load balancing, you can have 4 or 5 machines running simultaneously, okay? So availability means that within the availability set, each availability set, you only have one machine running. So if you want to have, so we can also do, reason I bring up the load balancing is that, so we'll set up organizations with load balancing, and in the load balancing, we have 5 servers, server 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each server is a separate availability set. So each server, server 1 is availability set 1, and that server 1 has 8 secondary machines attached to. So each server has 8. So that means if we have 5, we have 40 machines are secondary, and we have 5 machines are primary. So you can set that whole thing as a load balancing. So load balancing means that 5 servers running simultaneously. Any of that 5 server, one goes down. If any of the server goes down in that availability set, the second or third, if the secondary will kick in. If the secondary server in that availability set goes down, the third kick in, so far, so forth. So everybody had got that, right? What the load balancing and availability works. Are we good with that?
So what you're saying is the high availability by default itself, 1 will be primary and the 8 will be secondary?
Not by default. If you don't have, so let's back up here. Microsoft, when we purchase a subscription, Microsoft guarantee 99.99%. That depends on the subscription you can buy. You can buy up to 99.996 of them. So that's a lower, that percentage. However, for each, you can also set up high availability for your each server. So if your each server can be a part of the availability set. In a set, you have 1 primary with 8 secondary. However, you can set up to 8 secondary, but most of the time you might only set 2 or 3 secondary, because I doubt that 9 machines.
Oh yeah, that was my question actually.
Yeah,
that was my question. I don't want to charge for 8 VMs.
Secondary, you don't need a secondary. You want to have.
So when I turn, so while creating the VM, when I turn on the availability option, so that will give me an option to select number of secondary nodes.
Before you create the VM, but remember I said you have to have the availability set before. You have to create the availability set names first. You have to create all your availability first. Then when you create the VM, you're going to attach that availability set to the VM at the time you create the VM. If you don't do that, you cannot attach it later. That when you create the VM, we have to tell them that this is a part of availability or not.
Okay.
A good question, yes. So we can set up to 8 secondary. Doesn't mean you have to have 8 secondary, okay? Up to 8. So each availability set can have up to 8 secondary and 1 primary, up to 9 machines for each availability set. And you can set up to 64 availability set per subscription. You with me on that? So, and somebody might say, oh, who needs that? Trust me, like large organizations, Amazon, they have that many availability set, and they have that many secondaries and primaries in the each availability set. So everything in the each availability set are mirror image, which means that when the data getting into, if you set, let's say we set up 9 machine availability set 1, we have 1 primary, server 1, and server 2 to 9 is a secondary. So anytime you add data to the primary, they all get copied to the secondaries. So it's not, they're write to the same time. It's not that they don't copy from, once it write to server 1, that it copies to the secondary. It's not that. They all write at the same time. That's why we call mirror copying, mirror imaging. So it's doing a mirroring between the servers. So each availability set within the machines in there are simultaneously getting written. So when machine 1 goes down, machine 2 can kick in, and you can set up automatically to kick in, and the users won't even know if the machine got changed. So I just want to make sure that we're clear with the availability set and load balancing. A lot of times people ask, oh, I already have load balancing. Why do I need availabilities? Why do we need to set up availability sets, high availability? Because that's two different strategy. Load balancing is to help your performance to make sure that if you have a lot of transactions to spread around the machines, around the servers. However, if that's out of that load balancing, within your load balancing, if you have 5 servers, if server 1 goes down, if in load balancing, that one's going to stay down unless you have that server 1 is a part of the availability set. You with me on that, right? So anyway, so that I just want to make that clear to make sure that we know what availability is, what is load balancing, what the limitations we have in the Azure portal. Any question?
I'm good to hear me.
Okay, so we have unplanned hardware maintenance event. Why do we need to have, also we set availability, so sometime if you wanted to do upgrade on to your primary, then you can switch it to secondary, do something on primary and switch it back, right? So you can we use that for that reason as well. So anyway, so unplanned hardware maintenance event, unexpected downtime, planned maintenance event. So this is the reason that maintenance versus downtime, that why we would use availability set. So the whole plan with availability set is that if you want to make sure that you have 100% up and running, that you don't with no downtime, you have to have availability set, because in one machine there is no way that machine itself is going to be 100% available, right? So a machine, you can have problems, you can have hardware problems, anything that can go down for any reason. That's why we want to set up, we need availability. So here's availability set. You can configure multiple virtual machines in availability set. Of course, as I say, we have one, and then we have it. We can also combine the load balancer, that's what I was talking earlier, with the availability set. So each server in the availability set can be a part of the load balancer as well. And you can use manage this with the virtual machine and unmanage this as well. So we can update fault domains. So update domains let Azure to perform incremental or rolling upgrades or across a deployment. During planned maintenance, only one update domain is rebooted at a time. But if you have fault domains, a group of virtual machines that share a common set of hardware switches that share a single point of failure. So VMs and availability set are placed in at least 2 fault domains. So fault domain is also, that has to do with, okay, now we have a virtual machine up and running, but what happened, we set up availability set. Okay, one machine goes down, the primary goes down, secondary is going to kick in. We got that. But what happened if your network has a problem, right? So if our virtual network goes down, if virtual network goes down, it doesn't matter how many secondary you set up, and the primary you set up, if they're all on the same network, if that one virtual network goes down, every machine on that network is going to go down. You're with me on that? So in that case, what we always do is we try to set up a different virtual network. So we're also setting up availability set in the virtual network. So you can have multiple virtual network and say, hey, one goes down, second kicks in, second goes down, third network kicks in. So that's what we're talking, that's where that fault domain comes in. So because if you just do a update domain, that means that you have one single point of failure. So we need to make sure that sets up place at least 2 fault domains. So if one died, the second domain will come in. You with me on that, right? So not only that you have to concern about availability for a server, your virtual machine, you also have to concern about the network that that virtual machine is associated with. So not only we set up a availability for the virtual machine, we also set up for the network. And we set up for, okay, so 99.95% Azure SLA for most virtual machines. So we're also setting up a availability set for redundancy. So, and when you purchase, also when you have the VM, you can have a redundancy to, we'll see that when we do the backup and stuff, you can set a redundancy to the same local data center or a same region, but to a different data center or a different zone. You can set up to all that. So we'll see all that. So how update domain and fault domain, so we'll talk about that. You can have up to 20 update domains in resource group management. So in each resource group. So those are always changing though. So before you create it, I would highly recommend to look at the Azure site, go to Azure site and make sure you look at the latest defaults are. Because they're changing all the time. So I do want to make sure we get a chance to do the virtual machine Azure port high availability, because that would be a good one for us to do. Let's go ahead and do that. Any questions, concerns?
I have a question actually. So you
Please.
said that we can have the virtual machines in the different availability zone and the different virtual network, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So are we gonna do a peering between these
Yes,
availability
yeah.
sets?
If you have to do that, you're going to do either peering. You can do peering between different virtual networks, between the different virtual networks, or you can do a virtual gateway also. You can set up a virtual gateway if you don't want to do peering. Let the gateway handle all the different networks. So it knows for one network to talk to the other, so you can set up a gateway as well, virtual gateway as well.
So which one is cost effective? I mean, gateway or
Well, it
the
depends on if you only
seamless
have
peering?
only a couple of, if you only have one or two virtual networks, and if your virtual networks are, let's say, in the same country or the same zone, as they're all in East Coast or all in West Coast, peering is cheaper. But if you have all over different locations within the U.S., as well as if you have outside of the U.S., having the gateway is better. But some country has regulations on what type of peering you can do, and I know it was especially with China because we just set up for China and we run into so much regulations of the government regulations, and some of them will not allow you to set up a virtual gateway. So you have to look at that as well. But I don't think India has any problem. You guys have other locations other than U.S. and India, or so for networking you might want to look up the regulations.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? That if
Yes,
you
yes,
have if you have only like two network, I would do peer-to-peer. But if we have more than two, and they are not in the same country, not even the same zone, the gateway will be better. But gateway will be more cost because gateway you have another machine, another object you're paying for. Peer-to-peer, then you don't have to pay for that, so that's why it's more expensive.
So gateway is like we need to have a separate VM, and that's
and put the gateway on the VM. You got it. Yep.
Okay.
Or a device. You can have a device attached to it. But one way or the other, you're paying for that object. If you had an additional object, you got to pay for that object. So unless you have a lot to put on, that is worth it to do. But it's not worth it to do. And also, here's another thing. I want you guys to highly recommend you guys also that when you guys do all these setup, stay very close with Azure Virtual, Azure representative. They are, when you purchase any subscription, there is a rep associated with that subscription. You can call them and say, hey, I want to run these things. Can you make sure? And so I have clients that run 2-3 months, in a production environment, and Microsoft has given us 3 months for free, and also come back and they say, okay, in the production, these are the virtual machines you have. This is, these sizes are not, they come back and give you all kinds of advice. So you're not out there all alone. So, talk to your rep. They can give you analysis, have somebody from Azure team will work with you to make sure that you have the right, setup for your organization. If you're like, well, I'm not sure I should use what this size, this is how big a database I have, what type of, I'm not sure what type of, how big a hard drive I need, all that stuff. So, that's what they're for. We're paying for the subscription support. That's what they're for. So take advantage of that. Don't try to figure out your own and, then end up, find out that you thought that it's going to be $300 a month and end up paying $3,000. In the beginning when Azure came out, we have a lot of company, what they thought it was, and when it came out was totally different because there's a lot of other factors that people wasn't concerned about it. Wasn't sure what to do with it. You know what I mean? So I am going to let's look at the document before, like we always.
I have one more question, May, actually.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
So the VMs is in case my request is to, if my customer is coming and saying that, all the VMs needs to be created in a private network. So in that case, my VM won't have access to internet. So in that case, do we have a NAT gateway, something like that? Or?
Okay, Radha, what do you mean your VM does not have?
If I'm just going to have everything in the private network.
Uh-huh.
Private subnet, so with no internet access. So in case if I have to do that, like if I have to download some packages or something like that, right?
Then you got to FTP.
So all I need is.
Then you're going to have to FTP it. You got to be able to FTP to that site. That's the only way you can get stuff.
Do we have a NAT gateway concept here?
You do, but I mean, if you're not going to use it all the time, it's not worth it to set that up, because that's a lot complicated setup. If you're going to need to do it, like say, okay, once a month I need to download this much data from a customer, that is worth it to do. But if not, it's not worth it to do that.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you're just going to do it once in the blue time, you're not going to need to do it all the time. But another thing is that, you have other, you can upload it to GitHub. You can upload it to, Dropbox, right? I mean, you have other ways to upload and download instead of creating a direct connection, a special connection to the customer, because that's going to cost you money.
Okay.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? I would upload it to, if I'm moving data between my customer and my data center or anything, that's how I do it. I just put it out, upload it to GitHub, and then I download it on my side to GitHub.
Got it. Yeah.
That makes sense? Yeah. Okay. All right. So here are, let's look at the document first. And I do apologize, some of the syntax is not working the way I like it, but that's, PowerShell, that's what it is. You have to learn how the PowerShell works. And sometimes it works, when we're moving, cutting and pasting, sometimes it doesn't work, and how that goes. So we're going to create, but for this particular one, for the high availability, I do want you guys to create a separate resource group, and we are going to create separate VMs in here. Okay, because so first we're going to do is we're going to create a resource group, and make sure you name a resource group that for availability, a resource group availability, and then once you create the resource group, we're going to create availability set. Within the availability set, of course, make sure that you are using the same location. If you create the resource group in East US, make sure that we create the availability set in East US. So the first, we create a resource group. Second, we create availability set. Then within the availability set, we didn't get credential. Within the availability set, we are creating, I want you to look at the third step here. The fourth step is within the availability set, we are going to create 2 VMs within that availability set. So, make sure you look at the statement before you copy and paste it. Make sure we change every appropriate thing in there before we go in and do that. Okay. See, notice that we're using a for loop. So up there, I have I equal 1. And, so developers, you guys know what the programming stuff here, but 1, and we're increasing I plus plus. We're going to increase I. When I is equal to 2, we're going to get kicked out. So that's why if you see that when we run that statement, you're going to have 2 VM comes out of this. Okay. So make sure that, so it will be my VM1 and my VM2 is what you're going to get. So we're going to create 2 VM, and that 2 VM is going to belong to that availability set name. If you change your availability set name, whatever you created up there, make sure that is the availability set name. So in that availability set, we are creating 2 VM, and that takes a couple minutes, or take more than a couple of minutes. Then you can go into the resource group availability, and look at your availability set. And you can check available VM sizes in the availability set. So you see what your VM sizes are, but you can look it up in here as well. This is statement. You can look it up in the portal as well. And you can always run Azure Advisor. I don't know if you ever run it, but Azure Advisor in this one, so if you guys can see that, it tells you that, hey, we have 3 recommendations. So, and we have 11 recommendations for security. And this is a test environment, so I'm not really doing any security, so they're not happy with that. But anyway, so you can see and you can look up what that recommendation is, that if they didn't like our availability. But our availability, we set up 2 VM in the availability. All right, so let's go to Tom with that. We should also have a document for the availability set. Availability statement. So everybody got that, right? We're creating a resource group. We're going to create a new resource group this time, guys. And we wanted to make sure that resource group, whatever resource group you created the location in, create the availability set in. And then within that availability set, we are creating 2 VM in that availability set. And we just look at the sizes of the VM and all that stuff. So that's pretty quick and easy to do. Hopefully we can get that done before 10:30. And that was the last thing we'll do today. And we will continue with the rest of the labs in here on Wednesday, and we'll have a couple new ones in there as well. So let's go ahead and run that. If you can go back into Azure Portal. Today Azure Portal hasn't been very nice to me today, but it doesn't like to come back to work on Monday. What can I say? I think I already have a resource group. Let me see if I have resource group availability. Back to my resource group. I don't have availability. Okay, so good. I don't have that. So let's hope that we don't have any weird thing happen on this one. Cross our fingers. All right. The first one. So after we create the Azure Resource Group, that we are going to create the availability set. I think that went pretty well, didn't it? Then we have a for loop. Okay, okay, I didn't do the credentials. All right, I missed the credential. Okay, to get the credential. And I should be able to run the other statement. Okay, so that's going to take us a little bit of time because it is creating the, as you guys can see, it's going to create 2 different VM, and even with 1 VM it takes us a while, and it is putting us in that availability set. So back to talking about any questions with the, we talked about the availability set, and how availability set works, what type of availability set you can create, and when we're doing the availability set, not just for the VM itself, we also need to have availability. We need to have a failover. Pretty much availability is failover, right? We do have a failover for the networking as well, not just for the machines. So any other question, guys? And we're waiting for this to run. I just want to make sure I answer to everybody. And it depends on what time we come back. See if I might be able to do no, backup is going to be a long one.
May? Hey, May?
Did anybody need me?
Yeah,
Yes.
May, I'm getting an error called credential. What is it? The credential because it is null something. Cannot bind the argument to parameter credential because it is null. I think my Azure session got disconnected in between the.
Oh, okay.
So
Um,
need to restore it something.
yes, hold on. Okay, in the availability set, okay, so we run, so the only thing that you only had to run is the third statement in the statements of what is CRED variable equal get credential. That's only one you need to run. I mean, you already created the resource group and the availability set, right?
Yeah, I already
Okay.
created the resource group.
So you need to do the credential again, or you can do that, variable dot create. You saw that the third statement, right? You saw it in there?
1 second, let me see that.
Yeah, in the notepad statement.
Okay, so the scred.get credential.
Yeah, you have to do, so because in our syntax there, we have the credential in there. So it's looking for that, that's why.
Yeah, 1 second.
Yeah, this is the part that it takes, because it's going to create 2 VM, it's going to take us a while, that's how I say. Yeah, that's the only thing that in PowerShell here that I hate in the portal is because that when one section died, that you lose all your variable. But in a real world, if you're running a pay subscription, it normally don't go off. Only happened because we're doing it in a test environment. But you guys should not go off. I don't know why you guys go off though.
Sure.
Yeah, so go back and create the credential variable first, and then run that again.
Yeah, now it is creating fine.
Oh, but yeah, just take time on that.
Yeah, it will take time. It's just 5% now.
Oh, so where are you located? Are you
Yeah, I'm also located in Atlanta only, but since I'm traveling right now, I'm in New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Is that cold there, or
it was raining yesterday night.
If it's raining and if I'm not driving, I don't mind. If I'm driving, I don't like to be driving the rain. But I'm in Florida. It's the storm season is starting.
So you are presenting this from home or you're in office?
I'm at home. I'm from home. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 6:30 in the morning. They better not go into the office. I shoot somebody if I had to do that. No, I've been about my personal stuff, but I was working Microsoft for 15 years, and then I went to work for Oracle, and I got diagnosed with brain tumor. So I went through about 17 surgery. There's 6 different type of cancer. Yeah. So I'm disabled kind of. So I have, and the last cancer was in my spine. So I lost my mobility. So I have both Titanic legs on my both legs. I have Titanic legs. So I have a very expensive leg. It cost me about $1 million for this Titanic leg. But yeah, so I pretty much now, so I kind of do a partial retirement. I did retire at some point, and then I came back to a couple of years, and the kids are out of school. You get bored.
Yeah, sorry to hear that.
So so I my career kind of got cut short at Oracle, but they were very good to me. I worked there 6 years, and when this all happened, they keep me on the payroll for 5 years, and they give me a 3-year severance pay. So they treated me very well. And when I was able to get back to work, and that Microsoft offered me, and I said okay, so all the Microsoft Gold partners that I work with, and and I choose to work with Wintellect because they have the best reputation. So yeah.
That's good at least.
Yeah, they were very good to me. Yeah, both Microsoft and Oracle were very good to me. That's the only 2 companies I work for. as a permanent employee. But other projects I do as a consultant. Yeah. So, yep, I pretty much work from home. It's hard for me to travel these days because of all kinds of regulations that airports and airlines have, and I have too much metal pieces in my body. So if I go through any of them, it's going to start ringing like crazy. You know what I mean? So that's also it's a little bit hard for me to type. I only have one arm, so I try to type things up before and try to do cut and paste from here. So, but anyway, that's a little bit about me. I'm still here.
Great to hear your story. You're back to work after such a big.
Well, I could, financially, if I could, I want to retire, I can, but, and I'm not rich or anything, but, you have to feel, I think for me, it's important when I go through all that surgery and stuff, it's important for me to feel like I'm needed. I need to feel like I'm needed. I need to feel like I'm, part of this, world that I may be a very small, my contribution to the world is, but I need to feel that I'm needed, so I like working and I love teaching and I do this my whole life. So pretty much I don't know what to do without it. So, and I pretty much, all the money I make, I donate, I do, every once a month I cook for a homeless shelter near my home for 150 people. I cook for their all Thanksgiving, Christmas dinner. I love to cook, so.
It's inspiring,
Yeah, thank you.
Inspiring.
But it does, it does change who you are. You got, after you go through that, it does, change who you are. You have a different take on life, I would say.
Yeah, it's really inspiring.
Well, I mean, there's times that, a lot of people think, how can you be still happy? He said, well, what do you want me to be? I mean, you can only sit and cry for so long. At some point, you're like, okay, this is what my life is. I got to live with it. You know what I mean?
It's almost like a Richard Branson story.
A lot of people tell me to write a story about me, but like,
Yeah.
But I could have done it without people. I have very good, very good friends. I had very good family supported, my husband was very supported. So I don't think I would have gone through that without their help.
Mm.
So I had very good kids. I had 3 kids, and they were very supportive throughout all my surgery and stuff. So. I feel bad that I wasn't around as much as I could have because I was sick, but it was the other way around. They feel bad that, they were burning on me because I was worried about them. So it was very interesting, but that all came out good. That's what I'm here for. I believe that God's going to tell me some point that why I'm here, but he hasn't told me yet. So anyway.
Yeah, it's really great to learn from you about the Azure.
Thank you. And I mean, the technology has always interested me. So, but really, the funny part is that when I was growing up, I wanted to be a judge. My grandfather was a judge, and I'm very short. I'm 4'10", so being the youngest and 9 siblings. So when you start talking, everybody tells you to shut up, right? So I'm like, I'm going to be a judge. So when I walk in, everybody's going to get up and they're going to respect what I say. So I wanted to be a judge. And when I came to U.S., they said, well, you weren't born here, so, it would be hard to go into law school. So I went into computer science, and because it's like, are you good at math? I'm like, well, we're Asian. Asians are pretty good at math. Most of us are. So that I've never seen a computer before. When I seen a computer, the first class of computer science I took, I never seen a computer before. So that's funny. And back in the old days, we are a country, a third world country. We don't have computers, you know what I mean? We're talking 30-some years ago, 35 years ago. So that's how I got into computer, and I was in the first semester. I haven't even graduated yet. My professor, I went to Stanford, and my professor said, "Oh, do you want to get a job at Microsoft?" And it was funny. I've been only US like 6 months. I didn't even know what Microsoft was. So I was like, let me ask my, my family, my parents, and my parents like, oh yeah, tell you want to work at Microsoft. So I worked internship a year, and then before I graduated, I was already working for Microsoft 2 years. So I never had to put a resume or been an interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, never had to do that. Anyway, so everybody able to get your VM back? If you get the statement come back, let's go back into your resource group in the portal and make sure you can see your VM. So what your resource group should be, my resource group availability or something with availability. And you should see your availability sets and stuff in the portal. So it's really cool that you create something and you can go look at it there in the availability set. You should see your both VM running. See, so I have, so under your availability set, you should see your VM. You can go into each VM from there as well. It will tell you. And the cool stuff also that, we didn't look at these before, but I wanted to show you also that your CPU average, your network total. So you have a lot of information right then and there for the VM to look at it. So if you're using the right speed, is that your CPU average. So you normally want to say, well, my CPU average is about 65, 70. You want to be notified, all that good stuff. We're going to talk about in a future sessions about the alert and all that stuff, but monitoring, alert, and all that. So you can look at all the information there. Notice that you have 2 VM already that created in your availability set. And again, people say, how many VM do I need to, how many VM do I need to have in my availability set? That's up to you guys. That's up to your organization and how important is your application to be running. So that's kind of the strategy. You need to decide also, do we need to have these in the load balancing first? You need to decide, is that a load balancing? When I create a VM, does it need to be a part of the availability set? Does that availability set need to be a part of load balancing? So you got to think about all of those. Creating VM is very easy. You guys see that we can create a VM left or right all day long. But what you really need to understand is that what are the entire architecture and figure out that, okay, how many VM do I need? What VM that I can create and what VM needs to be, what do we need to set up for? Do we need to set up as a part of availability set? Do I need to set up as a part of load balancing? What operating system do I need to put on my VM? What application that I'm going to run a VM. You got to have all that information before creating a VM, because creating a VM is the easiest part. A couple click, as you guys see, you can create. But you need to have that all the backbone to make sure that you're creating a VM, because every single VM you're creating costs money. So you got to make sure so think of it also that VM is like a physical machine, because it's so easy to create. People just create left or right. You don't want to do that. You also want to have a limit that who has permission, that who can create the VM, because if not, you're going to see 100,000 VM shows up. And people don't just keep creating because they're not sure what they're doing. So really make sure that I've been to a lot of, been looking at a lot of clients site that when we audited, that's one of the things that came out, that they have so many VMs that they don't need it. And sometimes people don't even know they created that VM, they never use it, and they create another one, and you're getting charged for every single VM. So even though it's so easy to create, keep that in mind, is that's like another physical machine there. So hey, you don't create, you don't go buy another computer. We don't go buy a computer every day, right? We're not buying a computer every hour, every minute, right? So think of it that way also, is that VM is a physical, if it's a physical server, would you buy it? If you're not going to buy that, don't create the VM. Because that's number one thing that with the first time Azure came out, that people got dinged by a lot of customers because they had too many VM. And last year, Microsoft went to audit 1,000 customers, and out of that 1,000 customer, 89% of customers have misused the VM. So that's a very high percentage. So I want you guys to be aware of that. So everybody able to create the availability set, go into the portal, look at the availability set, and see your VM. So that's what we done. We had create the availability set. Again, we're not a networking class, so we didn't go into network, but now you have availability in the VM, but you need to also have availability in the network also, because if you don't have it, if you're both network both availability set is, both VM and availability set is in the same network, if that network goes down, we're screwed, right? So you have to think of all the things that, what could it go wrong? How can I protect it to make sure my VM is not going down, as much as possible, which is 99.9999%. All right. Any questions, concerns, burning desires? So any questions? Nope. Okay, so we're going to regroup that, what we did today. So today, we did a lot of different things today, right? So the last thing we did is create the VM. So what we've done before also is that, to go back and look what we've done so far. We create a VM using a PowerShell, which we haven't created a VM in PowerShell. We also show you how you can create a VM in Azure Portal. You guys smarter, you can figure out that's not that hard. However, creating PowerShell is going to give you a little bit of more juice in it. So in order to create a VM in PowerShell, you have to know more about it. So the goal is we want to show you that, hey, you got to put a lot of thought into the VM. Then we also create and manage the disk. We create a disk we attach to the VM that we created earlier. So we can show you that how we create a disk and how we also put an operating system onto that VM. So when you create a VM itself, you just have a empty machine. We just have a startup machine with no operating system. We put Windows Server 2016 on it, and then we also we create a disk, and then we attach the disk to the VM. And the last thing we did is we create a availability set, and within the availability set, we create 2 VM belonging to that availability set. So, any questions, concerns, burning desires? Nobody have any question for me? And also, what I would tell my students also is that when you guys going through that and go back and you're working in the environment and stuff, and I mentioned it earlier today as well, if you have questions or concerns or anything that is say, hey, I'm trying to figure something out how to do this, and if you're not sure how to do it, you have my email address, reach out to me. I'm not saying I know everything, I don't, but I'll try to, if I don't know something that you guys are requesting, I'll try to at least point you to the right resource. All right? If you guys have no questions or concerns for me today, that we'll call it a day. It depends on where everybody is. Have a good day, good evening, a good morning, a good day, or a good afternoon. I will see you guys on Wednesday. We are going to continue the rest of this, as well as we have a couple new labs that we need to do on Wednesday. All right?
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, guys. I know it's been a long day, so enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll see you guys on Wednesday. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day, guys. Stay out of trouble. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. All right. Can I stand out up? Look back at later.